Hello. Good evening. Good evening, Evie.
Happy 2K.
Thank you very much.
At least this isn't Y2K, like, everyone's freaking out. Is my computer gonna turn back on?
Y2K was
Weird.
it was kind of hilarious because such a huge big deal was made out of it. My dad was a computer programmer and he got a lot of business out of the Y2K panic. And I remember New Year's 2000, I was sitting there thinking, okay, let's keep an eye on all the computers and all the digital things. And like nothing happened anywhere. And I called up my dad and I was like, dude, are you gonna have a lot of problems now? Because like a lot of people paid you money to fix something that didn't exist. And he's like, nah, it's not really a problem. Yeah. Hello, Jeroen. Hi yourself. Hello, Anitha. Thank you for stocking my fridge. Hello, Osa. Hello, Thornall. Hello, D.
Hello,
Oh my
Kyle.
God, even a wild Kyle spotting. I don't remember if we've ever had a Kyle in the pub chat. I don't remember it anyway. Thank you, Jeroen. I've said it before. I always find these number milestones kind of funny. Like, 2 weeks ago I had 1,985 subs, and none of us thought that was a big deal. And 15 subs later, woohoo! Suddenly it's a big deal. But it's nice to have little milestones and celebrate as you go along. Oh, poor Kyle is abandoned by his wife this weekend. Aw. Hi, Ron. Hi, Morton. Hi, K2U3. I don't know your actual name. I don't remember it, but I don't think I know it at all. How are you doing, Evie?
I'm good. It's Sunday. Mentally preparing myself for the work week, so yeah.
I'm kind of mentally preparing myself for another week of doing nothing. I'm between jobs right now.
Thank you, Anita. I need that. Considering I haven't brushed my hair today, or TMI here, put on a bra, like, you really know how to stroke an ego, Anita.
Is that why you're leaning forward like that?
Well, I mean, I can do that, but like, I don't care. I'm being lazy, so I'm like, I can just put my hands on my desk.
Fair enough.
So.
Fair enough. What's Dune, bro? Oh my God, look at that. It's a Joe Byrne.
Hey guys,
Hey, Joe.
how are
Thanks
you?
for stopping by. Good to see you.
Kyle, so he's reading Shan. So the first book is that that's the second book in the Con Iggulden fantasy series, right, Kyle? First one is Darien. I'm intrigued by
Kyle is
that.
reading
That is what it
Xi'an
is.
by Con Iggulden. Yeah.
Yeah.
I only know Con Iggulden from
The historical fantasies, or not historical fantasy,
yeah,
but
no,
fiction stuff.
I'm aware of who Con Iggulden is, but my actual only direct awareness or experience of Con Iggulden, and I can't remember the book, but there was a blurb quote by Con on the cover of something else, but I've never read any Con.
Historical fiction as it ought to be written.
Yeah, exactly. Engineering manuals as they ought to be written. Thank you, Johan. I don't believe we've actually officially met before, but subbing as soon as you saw one of my videos is, I'm assuming you must have seen one of my more recent videos, not one of my early videos. Not that all my recent videos are actually any good either, but
Fantastic. Congrats on
Thanks,
2K.
Joe. Thank you.
You're almost
I was
at the
just-
year. Meaningless.
Exactly. Somebody. I posted on the Discord a screenshot when I had like 1998 or something, and they said, and somebody said, "Oh, is that the year you were born?" And I was like, "Oh, that's sweet. We passed the year I was born like 3 weeks ago." Oh my God! Look at that. It's Belltube in the
Brian.
house. With no disco outfit and no fancy light. I'm just giving him a hard time because he was saying earlier that he wasn't sure that he could join without beautiful production quality.
Whatever you just said, I just missed everything because I had 3 tabs open and I heard them all like back to back to back to back to back.
Oops.
Oops.
Yeah, and your net also, Brian, looks like it's a little.
Are you on
side.
dial-up? You want AOL? You using AOL?
Do I look like, is it like that?
It's a little.
It's very grainy and
rough.
It seems very delayed.
You're
Really?
pixelated like bad Japanese porn.
That's the best kind of Japanese.
I was gonna say it sounds like someone is speaking from experience.
Of course.
Damn it. All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Let me.
Now
Let
you
me
look.
log
clearer,
off.
Oh, you look
Brian.
great now.
What's
Now
that?
you look- now
You
you
look
much
great.
better.
Sound great now. Maybe it was
Yeah.
just taking its own sweet time to fully
I
connect.
see. Well, so I'm using my laptop camera, which I never use. I'm using my laptop speakers, which I never use. I'm not in my normal streaming room. I'm sitting on the couch, but I had to come on because it's a 2000K, 2K? 2000. I don't
Yeah.
know whatever it is. I had to come on and celebrate with you.
Yeah, I agree that you had to do that. I actually had to convince him. We were chatting yesterday, day before, and I said we would love to have Bell Sofa join us.
It is. I mean, look. it's
So
like
perfect.
couch, right? Yay.
Exactly. Perfect. No, I'm super like for live streams. I don't think that production quality is anything to be particularly worried about. You know,
Gotcha. Did you get my Dropbox that I sent you?
I got your message. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. I had
Okay.
a friend here all day. And
Before I post it, please watch it because I'm gonna piss off other booktubers for sure. So I was like, will you please be the judge if I can post this short and how many enemies I'll make immediately?
you should, if you want a real opinion on pissing off other booktubers, you should probably send it to Raf.
Oh my
Fair
God.
enough.
I was thinking that. But Raph will just say yes, but do it
Raf
anyway.
will say it's not rough enough.
It's like, yeah.
Hit harder, Brian. Yeah, no, I'll have a look at it. I'll let you know.
Okay.
It depends. Is
I'll
your
let
goal to piss them off a lot or not to piss them off? That's the
It
question.
wasn't even like I
Yeah.
didn't even think about it till after. First of all, I've never shot a short, and I really didn't plan to ever shoot it's just not my thing, really. But I had something on my mind, and I got it off my chest in 47 seconds, and thought it might be a good short. And then I realized, I might be kind of making fun of other booktubers here, so maybe I won't send that. I don't
Do
know.
they deserve it? Do they deserve it?
You have. I will just say this now, Brian. You have my full permission to make fun of me specifically all you want. So
Fair.
yeah, it's fine.
Although I don't know that you were in that category.
Dang it!
I feel the same way. You have my full permission to make fun of Evie.
Good, because I'm reading your book next week.
I
so
fully support making fun of Evie as well.
excellent.
We're all
Listen,
okay with it.
I make fun of myself enough, so
It's
know
unanimous.
everything
I
else
have
is simple.
tried so many times, so hard to actually compliment Evie, and she won't take it. So yeah, exactly. She's doing the fake throw up thing again already. So I think you have to just make fun of her. It's the only way you can actually interact with her.
Gotcha.
It's playground rules. Like, I know that you actually like me as a person if you make fun of me. So
Fair. Absolutely.
And I mean, especially playground rules, because all 3 of us are men. And on the playground, the only way you can interact with a girl is make fun of her and pull her hair. So
there you go.
And
I have a pigtail, so
I can't reach
you can just
I can't reach
fuck
your
on my
hair,
brain
but I
or
can make
whatever.
fun of you. you know.
I
So
Fair
really like
enough.
things.
thank you, Joanna. I appreciate it. Somebody said, oh yeah, there it is. Dee said she subbed when she heard I was a practicing Buddhist, which, okay. I mean, my channel doesn't have anything to do with Buddhism. Like occasionally in the pub, we talk about everything. So Buddhism has come up. And I have talked about it a little bit.
The only reason I'm still subbed to Matt is because of Fitz. So
Yeah, fair enough. It's actually the only reason I still produce videos.
Well, if I had a cat, I might get up to 2,000 subscribers too.
I've really been thinking that I should just like do a branch channel, like a new separate channel, and just do Fitz videos.
I thought you were gonna say get another cat, and I'm like, oh.
Also, I've also been thinking hard about that.
I don't know, Matt. I'm not sure that cat videos would be popular on the internet.
Yeah, that's why I haven't done it yet. I
Yeah.
mean,
You just gotta put them in front of a piano, a keyboard, make them like play the keyboard. What else? That's all I can think of right now. But
the best thing I could do, I mean, I think the things that would certainly be the funniest are really hard to catch, but they happen all the time. Like just recently, I'm sitting at a desk right now, and my function while I'm sitting at this desk is usually to be a bridge between the desk and the other two pieces of furniture on either side of me. So Fitz will jump up on the desk, walk across me, and go over to the filing cabinet and stand on top of that, or go over to the, you know, and it's always amazing to me. Cats just inherently by nature always look so elegant and graceful. And yesterday, I'm sitting here, leaned back, reading. Fitz jumps up on the desk, walks across my lap behind my book, walks over to the filing cabinet, and just face plants on the floor. And I'm like, nothing is moving. I wasn't moving. The filing cabinet is definitely not moving. How did you manage to do that?
can you remind me? Have you ever had a cat before, Fitz?
Oh yeah. I grew up with cats.
Okay, because I was gonna say, cats are the most graceful yet graceless animals on the planet. George, like, I don't know how she would not be able to survive outside. Like, she's such a klutz. So
I kind of want to get a cat.
do it.
The only reason why I haven't, and,
Cats are cool.
and as cat owners, maybe you can tell me if I'm being insane about this. So I'm worried that a cat would.
General question: is Brian being insane about X? Answer: pretty much always yes.
Generally, yeah. I'm worried about a cat scratching my grand piano legs.
Ooh, yeah. If you have a grand piano, then
I have a grand piano, and I'm really worried about that.
So as long as you deter that behavior before it becomes a habit,
Yeah,
you wouldn't have a problem.
but even one would be kind of like, ugh, I would freak out.
So they generally will not scratch. Like, they'll scratch carpet. Like, we have a problem with one of our cats. Like, we have two cats, and one of them, even though she has scratchy pads all over the freaking house, she will just start scratching at the carpet as if it's a scratchy pad, and we're like, no. But the other one doesn't. She doesn't do anything like that. So,
well, I can close the room off. I just know that at some point that I'll be like, oops, I left the door open, and yeah.
More than anything, a cat would probably like sugar up to, like, start like.
Got it. That's fine.
Yeah,
that I wouldn't care about. It's just marking would bug me.
There is a certain level of just assume that everything will get broken, scratched,
right,
etc. Like if you really can't deal with that happening,
right,
then having a cat's a bad idea.
Same with kids.
Because it will happen. Same with kids.
Right. I was actually just gonna say, like,
Kyle.
Hi, Kyle.
Hey guys.
Hey, Kyle.
Kyle, did you get a haircut?
Yes.
All of them cut.
It is winter in Canada, but it has just become less wintry, so I can have short hair.
Oh,
but I was gonna,
is that a rule? Nobody told me. I just been freezing my ears off like for the last 20 years.
It's more that I get lazy, and then I'm like, well, I kind of like the extra heat. So
yeah,
now I'm finally like, I can get rid of
Fair
all
enough.
that shag.
Where's your winter beard, man? You need a winter beard to protect your face.
I actually just shaved too, so but I
Okay.
can't grow a beard. I can just look like I'm homeless. So
Kyle's also
warm.
like the most baby-faced person on our Discord. I like if Kyle ever tries to tell me he's older than 18, I won't believe him.
I get it at work all the time because I work in a bar, and people are always like, "Are you old enough?
Are
to
you
serve
allowed to
alcohol?"
be here?
And I'm like, "You guys, come on! That joke got old 10 years ago."
so when you were about 8, right?
Oh, shut up!
Good to see you, Kyle. Thanks for joining. Evie,
but-
continue.
To go back to the cat thing, Brian. So
Yeah.
I was gonna say, and then Joe mentioned about it's like with kids. So basically, you need to with a dog, with a cat, with kids, you need to baby proof your place. And if you can't baby proof it, then it's gonna there is a potential that it might get
Sure.
ruined. So
Got it. All right.
Yeah,
That's
I mean
good.
there's a certain level of like I'm a single older man who doesn't even have housemates. I live alone. So my flat has always been whatever the fuck I want it to be.
Right.
And that has changed since Fitz moved in.
Got
you
it.
know? Like there
it's Fritz's
were
place now. Not
there was
yours.
a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks of her discovering things that she could mess with that I would rather she didn't mess with and knock off shelves or knock over or pull down or whatever. So me just sort of going around after her when she was destroying or at least trying to destroy something and putting it away or putting it theoretically out of her reach. That kind of thing. So yeah, but it is a bit of a crapshoot. It is a bit of a crapshoot as well. Like
Yeah.
I have a leather couch that I love. And I was like, let's see what happens.
Right.
And luckily she has proven to be a cat that does not claw furniture.
That's good.
That's good.
Right. And maybe because I have a large cat tree for her, which is very, clawing attractive, and she does claw that quite a bit and doesn't claw my leather sofa and armchair. So
Though every single cat I've had growing up, and I've had lots of cats. Don't ask me the number because it would be embarrassing.
How many?
how many cats have you had?
What's your
Evie?
number,
Cat-
Evie?
So
Do we
I'll
need to
just-
start calling you Cat Lady?
I mean, I'm a reformed cat lady. Okay, I'll just say that. So growing up, mind you, this was the family house, so it wasn't like I had all these cats myself. We had at one time, and I should preface this and give you context. We lived out in the middle of nowhere, in the middle, out in the boonies of Appalachia, Tennessee, and we let our dogs out, and then they came back, whenever they wanted. Our cats stayed inside because we wanted to keep them inside. At one time, we had 14 dogs and 7 cats.
Oh
at the
my
same time.
God.
Yeah.
14 dogs.
Yeah.
I
So,
can't even deal with one half the time.
yeah. So,
You get
we
the older one to walk the younger ones.
no, we just let them out, and like they would just roam the mountains. And so we lived on a ridge, and it was a dead end road on this ridge, like 2 mile long. You had to go out. You had to be purposeful about what you were doing. So many people would drive to the end of our 2 mile long road and drop off their animal and leave. So many times. That's how we got all our pets, was because people would have just abandoned them, and we'd be like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna rehome them," and then we just got attached and never.
I mean, that's
let them go.
pretty good abandoning your pet behavior, though. Is like Not just dropping them off somewhere, but taking them to the weirdos down the street. that
Yeah,
have a million
we know
animals.
these guys will take them.
Yeah, I mean, at least you're actively going out of your way to look for someone who's probably going to.
Oh, they didn't give them to us. They would literally just drop them off. We'd see them wandering around.
Yeah, but I mean, the other option is dropping them off in the middle of the city.
Oh yeah.
You know, and you just have wild animals on the streets, and a lot of people do that, and the animals either just die, become weird and feral, or get picked up by the local animal control or whatever. But like the animal weirdos at the end of the road up on the mountain, taking it to them, I mean, that's actually pretty good behavior. I mean, yeah, it would have been slightly more human to say, hey, could we leave our animal with you?
There was
Wow.
one instance where a horse got loose from its paddock from like the farm like across the mountain, and I was so excited because it was like on our street. I'm like, oh,
we're about to inherit a horse.
And then it was there for like a week, and then the owners finally realized where it was and brought it back. I'm like, oh, it makes me so sad.
A week? You lost? Okay, I'm a city boy. I don't understand how you lose a horse for a week, but okay.
Horses just eat grass, right, Joe?
I did not. I thought
like
they had
them hanging out outside
from bags.
I have a coworker who grew up in Toronto, and he had just moved to like the town that I live in. And one day he came into work, and like we were right next to like a big place that has like a bunch of horse shows and stuff. And he's like, I just went in there and I just saw a horse. And we're like, yeah, like there's a horse show on. He's like, no, that's like the first time I've ever seen a horse. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, never seen one like in my whole life. And I was like, how old are you? And he's like 26. And I'm like, that is certifiably the most insane thing I've ever heard in my life.
I know people who it wouldn't surprise me if they'd never seen a horse in for
like
real.
He'd obviously seen like pictures and like in movies and stuff, but he'd
Sure.
never like physically seen a horse.
But like
yeah.
face to face, so to speak. Yeah. No, I mean, like I know people, they've lived in Berlin all their lives. They've lived in the middle of Berlin all their lives, and pretty much their whole life plays out in the city. You don't have to go far if you want to see a horse. Like you can go to Brandenburg, which is like maybe an hour from the middle of the city, and it's rural. But there are a lot of people who just, they're in cities, they don't get out much, and you don't see many horses in the middle of the city. It's one of the things I used to like about Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. has a very active mounted police unit, and you see them around the city all the time, which is really scary if you have to be in the middle of a demonstration against the government, because a horse will knock you on your ass.
Are you implying that you were somewhere on January 6th in the U.S.?
You know that there were other kinds of demonstrations, like demonstrating against the government doesn't mean you're a right-wing nut job. I was not part of that demonstration. That demonstration terrified me from across the pond.
We have horse-drawn carriages going through Central Park. You can be in the middle of Manhattan and see a horse.
Yeah.
I've ridden on those at my prom. Sounds ridiculous, but it was the thing to do.
That seems like a very New York
you
thing
are
to do.
wrong. Horses, you know what? All Rons are bastards. That's what I say to you.
My question is, are all bastards horses, Ron?
Apparently not, because Ron's a bastard.
But but Ron's right.
You don't know that Ron is not a horse.
The church does not recognize horse marriages, so I'm thinking Ron is on the right track.
Yeah, actually, that's true. No horses were actually fathered by married horses.
Right.
Mothered or fathered by
Anyways, to bring it back to books.
Oh,
I was going to bring it back to cats, but okay,
were we ever on books?
We haven't even started
we weren't.
on books.
So that's why I'm trying to like.
Okay.
I'm going to share my cat anecdote first because I waited patiently through Amy's.
Please.
Which is that growing up, I've had a total of 19 cats, and then I started dating my wife, and what I did not know is
she's
that her
not a
sister-in-law.
cat, is she? That's not where the story is going.
What I didn't know is that her sister is deathly allergic to cats, so we cannot have a cat because her sister would just never be able to come over because even just a little bit of like cat hair in the air will send her into shock. And I wish I had known that because I miss cats so much. Every time I go to my parents' house, I'm like, "Where's the cat? Where's the cat?" And I don't even talk to my parents. I just
So
don't.
if you
Does-
had
does
known
your-
that, Kyle, what would you have done?
I was going
differently?
to say, does your wife actually
Pick a
know
different
that you
wife,
would
for
not have
sure.
married her had she told you about
Yeah, I
her
tell her all the
sister?
time. I tell her all the time.
Okay. All
I'm
right.
just like, just so you know, you slid this information in at the wrong time.
She would not get
It's okay.
on.
She got me to love rabbits, so it's all good. I love rabbits now. I can live with that.
Your sister-in-law would not get on in my flat. Oh my god, cat hair. I literally could have built 4 new kittens since I got Fitz. Like almost every time I brush her,
Yeah, I was
I
brushing my
get a
rabbit yesterday. It was
kitten's
like,
worth. Like,
Are you
she's a-
contemplating a Frankenfitz?
if I had been keeping the hair, it would be really interesting. If I had been keeping the hair, I'm pretty sure that by now I would almost have a ball of hair that weighs more than the actual cat, and I don't know how that's physically possible, but I think I'd be there by now. To bring it back to books, I am reading the classic of classics.
one day that's going to be a really big hit.
Could be.
I got a
Yeah,
lot of
it
kids
seems
that
to be
author.
For
Yeah.
sure, yeah.
seems to be catching on slowly with the kids.
I randomly read like a quote from Return of the King a couple days ago, and I was just like, do I drop everything and reread Lord of the Rings? But I talked myself out of it. But man, I really love it, that series, honestly.
It's so good. I love seeing an 18-year-old who actually loves Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, you gotta respect
Because-
the classics.
Well, most kids your age don't seem to. I've talked to so many people who I otherwise respect. I mean, as much as you can respect like people your age, and I just they start talking about Lord of the Rings, and I'm like,
They just start dabbing and
how did I not know that you're an idiot? How is it possible that I've known you this long and I didn't know that you're stupid? You know?
for the record, to everybody watching or listening, I am a 30-year-old man. I am not 18.
Now, everybody who's watching and listening, take a look at Kyle and tell me if you believe that. I mean, have you
Tell us
noticed
your
how every
birth
time he says
certificate.
married, he goes like this?
That's funny.
I guess you guys have never met my wife. It could all be a hoax.
Yeah.
It's true. We have I've never seen your wife. So
You could be AI generated. I mean,
we
who
still
knows?
don't even know
I,
if Kyle has
so-
no, sorry, Jake doesn't have
I have convinced my wife tentatively to come on the channel when I hit 1,000 subs.
Woohoo.
Awesome.
So we'll see. She really is super camera shy. There's been times where I've been like on a live and she'll have to like run past real quick, and she'll be like, "Did anybody see me?" I'm like, "You can relax."
So, that being the case, how did you convince her to come on? Like,
just-
actually
well-
be visible and
Well,
sit
so
down in
actually,
front
what
of
I
the
did is I showed her videos of like Alan and Christina and like Bookboard and Zach, and I'm like, "See, look at all these people. Like their spouses come on, and Murphy has her husband on." I'm like, "See, it's a thing. Everybody will like it, you know." Like, and I'm like,
And
"Everybody's
they're-
nice."
They're cuter because of it.
Yeah.
You know?
Also, she like when we went to Vancouver, she met a couple of like she met Jake and she met Theo and Abby, and I feel like meeting some of these people in person has like more cemented it as like a legitimate. Like before she met people, it's just kind of like a weird thing I would go do off by myself, and now she's like, "Oh, these are like Kyle's actual friends." So
there are
now she's
actual
more
people
interested.
who do this,
Yeah.
not just my weirdo husband.
Yeah,
Husband. Yeah.
husband.
You can always create an alter ego character to join your stream as well.
For sure.
Or just invite
Daniel.
Brian's alter ego characters.
I love
I'm going to do that. At some point, there is going to be a video that occurs to me where I'm going to need you and your multiple personalities, Brian.
You got it. Well, I mean, I'll ask, but I mean, I'm sure the answer will be yes, but I'll pass the word along.
Yeah.
I'm reading this sucker. I've got about 20%
Ooh.
left.
Oh, nice. Wow, you're making really good headway
I
on
am
that.
How
rocking
many
through
times
this.
have you almost committed seppuku?
None. I love this book. And the weirdest part about it is that I remember I was in elementary school when the miniseries came on. I remember my parents watching it, in that like all of my shows that I wanted to normally watch that week that the miniseries was on, I couldn't watch because my parents were watching Shogun instead. So I was like,
It was a big deal when it came out.
Shogun, sentiment. But yeah, that's awesome. I love this book.
Yeah, I love the end of Shogun. I really want to reread it. I really liked it, but I did the over 3 months thing with Alan, and I'm just not hardwired for that. And I like every time I picked it back up, I was like trying to get back immersed into the Japanese culture. And it just kind of like made it a little bit more jarring. Like in a few years, I'm just going to sit down and just read it straight. And I think it's going to become an all-time favorite. Because
that's what I'm doing. I took a break after book 3 and did Gardens of the Moon. And then I went back.
A little light palate cleanser.
Little light Malazan palate cleanser. And then I went back and I was actually going to just stop right here and do Demon in White next. But that's not happening. So I'm going to finish Shogun, I think by tomorrow. And then I'm going to do book 2 in the Hybrid Helix series, which I'm very excited about, which is finally.
I've heard that series is terrible. Like I heard that author should just be like cast aside and
it was supposed to be in my December, and then
you're on mute, Joe.
Oh, Joe's on mute.
I was going to say, it was really good when you said cast that you went to aside, because I really think that author should be cast. It doesn't usually end well for me.
Yeah,
into the depths of hell.
It's like a very different word. I just sent book 5 to beta readers. I'm like finally free. I've been writing with like every spare moment for the last 8 weeks. And now I can take a little break. I have nothing to do because so far it's perfect. No negative feedback because I sent it out yesterday.
It is the perfect book right now.
Yeah. One guy read the entire Hybrid Helix this week.
Wow.
I'm just like, yeah. He's like, can I meme at you while I'm reading it? I'm like, if you want, I'm fine with that. So he did it every hour. I get like a couple memes about like chapter 7 in the first book, and then and I'm like, okay.
Can I meme at you?
Yeah. Just he DMs me all these memes. That's
a good question, Anitha.
No.
Is that guy you, Joe?
I couldn't do that. I haven't read Wistful Ascending in like a year and a half. I think I should reread that. Make sure I didn't make any mistakes, or make sure I remember what's in there. But no. So I'm in this blissful place where everything's good, and then next week the bliss will end. So people tell me all the problems.
Just for Evie.
Oh yeah, here we go.
Ow.
It's becoming heavier.
That's a good thing. That means she's not a skinny little baby.
It keeps eating and growing. I mean, like
I keep
telling her, a year 3/4 now. I keep telling her that 5 kilos is enough, but yeah, she's actually probably gonna get about 50% bigger. Apparently, yeah. They say that female
like taller though. Right?
Longer.
Oh.
Yeah. She's not fully grown. Like it's literally not so simple to pick her up anymore. I mean, 5 kilos on a cat is pretty big. She's this big, and this is 5 kilos. And Maine Coon females are meant to get fully grown at about 4 years, up to 8 kilos.
Well, old men like yourself need to find ways to keep fit. So if you just
it's great for my back and shoulders. It's absolutely her and kettlebells.
Cats.
Yeah.
Why get a kettlebell when your cat has 4 legs?
No, I'm going to get her one of those little harnesses with a handle on top.
There you go.
And then I can properly kettlebell her.
That's probably easier for you.
Put me down, human. Exactly. She is not. She is totally a lap cat, which I'm glad about. She like if I sit still for half an hour, 15 minutes, she'll come and sit in my lap. But she is not a pick-me-up cat. I feel very like little that she likes.
90% of cats.
Yeah. I've seen very, very pick-me-up tolerant cats, but she is not much of one of them. There's about a 30-second window where she'll tolerate it in anticipation of being put down, and then she will make it known that she should be put down. Yeah. Not put down in that way. Jerome is not a pick-me-up human. Yeah. No, I'm not much of a pick-me-up human either. I also, back to books. Fitz, could you fucking decide?
No.
Is Fitz deciding your TBR?
Fitz,
That would be a good video, I have to say.
Fitz is walking around on my desk.
My TBR.
Like, oh, I'm going to get down off the desk. No, actually, no, I think I'll sit down on the stack of books. Actually, you know, maybe I'll get down.
Listen, Schrodinger's cat or whatever, you know.
Evie recommended this, I think, on this particular translation on Pub 2 weeks ago.
Can't see what that is.
Don Quixote.
Don Quixote, Edith Grossman translation. I read this a long time ago, and it wasn't this translation. It was before this translation existed. And I'm surprised at how chunky this is. It wasn't, I don't remember it being very big.
You probably read it in an abridged version.
Maybe, yeah. Apparently. I mean, it certainly looks like it. And I bought this recently. The biography of Frank Herbert by his son.
Sorry.
Which is also an insanely chunky book. And it's stupid chunky, right? I'm a designer. So I open this up, and the first thing I think is, this is set in 13-point type with 18, 19, 20-point leading. It's twice as big as Dune, but it's not. It's got huge typography and huge margins. Why would someone? Why did Brian, not someone, let's call it by its name. Why did Brian decide that his father's biography had to be a doorstop?
Brian makes a lot of questionable decisions.
That's true. That's true. I've heard that this is not badly written and interesting. So we'll see. Maybe it's not.
The problem with Brian is the way he wrote the sequels makes me think he didn't understand Dune at all.
Ouch.
So it makes me suspicious. Well, that's what I'm saying.
I refuse to read anything that's related to Dune that was written by or had Brian Herbert.
I don't want to read any of the novels that were primarily Brian. At all. That's clear.
They're not good.
But there is only one biography of Frank Herbert, and it's written by his son. So I thought I'd give it a try.
I think that's like nice context too, because there's a bit of a personal touch. I would read that before I would read his other books. Also, Kevin J. Anderson, I've never read any of his books, except when I was younger, I read all the StarCraft novelizations, and I actually really liked them. I still, to this day, think fondly about those books, except one. There was one that was terrible, and it was really, really bad. Even when I was like 13, I hated it. And I went back and read it when I was like 20, and I still hated it. And it was like Gabriel Luna or something like that, and I just thought it was like some guy they hired. That's Kevin J. Anderson's pseudonym. So that's the only time I've ever read him, but that's like one of the only books I've ever given 1 star to.
Okay. And the broken binding edition of Perdido Street Station, which is sexy and signed. Although, I mean, typical author needs to sign 1 billion books. It's like, bleh. It's just like a scroll.
Oh yeah, I have to send book plates to Broken Binding.
There you go.
Start selling signed copies of my books. I have them right here.
Oh, cool.
Cool. I know. It's like I feel like I'm finally achieving all my goals.
You can't just so you know, you can't just write a J, because Joe Abercrombie already did that. I bought Wisdom of Crowds signed for Broken Binding, and it came in and it was just a J. I was like, Joe, you couldn't have done the rest of your first name at least. Like,
well, and that actually means that you got one of the very late book plates, because the first ones say Joe AB. And it just gets shorter and shorter as it goes along.
I got the very last one before he went to the hospital.
Exactly. It's just like,
tunnel.
Yeah, exactly. I can't use my hand anymore. Here you go, Kyle.
I actually spent like a week trying to give myself a cool signature when people started asking for signed books. I'm like, my signature is ugly and I never cared. Now I care. I was like watching videos on like how to make a cool signature, and I was like practicing in a book, like in a notebook. This is like the thing I never thought I need to do as an author.
Also, I'm pretty sure I'm assuming you have to make. You should probably want your author signature to be different from your like legal signature, so people can't, sign checks on your behalf or whatever.
If I do get a check signed with my author signature, I'll be like, okay, I know how this happened. This was not me. Yeah,
definitely, clearly a fake. Yeah, Perdido Street Station. It's about time I reread it. I read it a long time ago. The whole Baz Lag everything, and I have a very visual. Like, I'm very visual in my head when I'm reading books, and what usually sticks with me a really long time are like visual scenes in my head. I don't remember the story or exactly the characters or names but I'll be rereading something and I hit a certain scene and I'm like, oh yeah, I've got a picture of that in my head.
Matt, have you read any of the Sun Eater books yet?
No, I am my plan, which may not happen because I'm avoiding having too much of a plan at the moment, is finish this, which, I mean, these aren't too thick and long, and then I'll probably do some short stories for a couple of days, and then I will pick up Empire of Silence, which I have on my shelf already.
Empire of Silence is the weakest one by far, but by saying that, I mean, it's still like really good.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking it's the Rainwald Chronicles of Sun Eater.
I mean,
everybody
I haven't read Rainwald. That seems like a slight against Empire of Silence.
Yeah, it's really not. I mean,
I totally don't think so, because I think Rainwald's is really good. It's just compared to everything else in Realm of the Elderlings, it's the worst.
Yeah, I think with Empire of Silence, the main thing is Christopher Rocchio had not learned how to outline yet, and you can feel it in the book.
Okay.
And he's even went back and said, I learned to outline for Howling Dark, and you can see the difference immediately when you're reading it. So that's the biggest thing. I recently reread Empire of Silence, thinking that I would give it 5 stars because I was like, now I have all of this context, and I still gave it 4 stars. So I was like, oh, this feels like a debut book, but it's still very, very good. That series is just bonkers.
Joanna says she's amazed how many rereads I can manage. There are so many books I haven't read. I need to prioritize. My rule is I prioritize books I believe I will enjoy. And if I've read it and I loved it, I not only believe I will enjoy it, I'm almost certain I will enjoy it, unless it's been a really, really long time. So sometimes I just, like last year was half rereads. When I looked at my complete list of what I read, it was basically half rereads.
I was shocked when you had read a new book.
I don't regret it. Not a bit. But yeah, I've got Dandelion Dynasty on my shelf, which I really want to get to. And I keep hearing from people like Kyle and other people whose opinions matter that it's meant to be really good.
I'm leaving the stream. I'm sorry. I can't take this.
You didn't like Dandelion Dynasty, or you don't like?
No,
Kyle's
she
opinion?
loved it, but you didn't like that. She didn't like that you didn't mention her.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, I very specifically mentioned you as
people
everybody in the world other than Kyle. You're part of that.
Keep up, Evie.
Yeah.
But me specifically, I'm offended.
To be honest, I don't have you as a Dandelion Dynasty stan on my radar. I believe that you are.
Sorry, hold on. I need to completely swerve and have my allotted time to talk about Spear Cuts Water.
Spear Cuts Water.
You know it's just as good as Dandelion Dynasty. Actually,
I'm going to give this book 1 star if you finish the
Spear Cuts Through Water.
I'm going to Goodreads right now.
The Dandelion Dynasty stan in my head, like top of my list, is Pete.
Yeah, Pete, that's his favorite series.
Exactly. And he just put out a video, I think this morning or my time, about where he's just gushing about Dandelion Dynasty. But yeah, I've got that on my list for sure. And that's like 4 doorstoppers. I've got Empire of Silence to get to, Sun Eater, the whole thing. By the time I get that finished, it'll actually be finished. Yeah, I've got quite a few. Yeah, I mean, like I said, there are other people other than Kyle whose opinions happen to coincide with Kyle's.
Even broken clocks are right once in a while. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Mac, thank you.
I will say, Jerome, that a lot of people feel that way about Grace of Kings. At least try Wall of Storms if you kind of liked Grace of Kings, because Wall of Storms is like a much different style of writing itself. And a lot more people, if they're kind of mid on Grace of Kings, read Wall of Storms and love it. Ignore what Evie's about to say, because Evie's going to be like, actually, Wall of Storms is my least favorite, and nobody cares, Evie.
I was just going to say that the writing style is actually very consistent. It's just that Grace of Kings is a contained story.
Entirely
in
disagree.
its own. Let me finish.
Kyle started this conversation by having a conversation with you without you actually having said anything. So,
oh yeah, true.
You know.
But yeah, whatever. I don't know. I just, I'm being.
No, sorry. Finish. I was just trolling you. Finish your thought.
Yeah, no, I know. I was just gonna say that I feel like Grace of Kings. I mean, I think you kind of warned me about this when I started. Is like, oh, Grace of Kings is basically a setup book, a prologue to the rest of the series, and so it does feel like it stands on its own narratively, whereas between the two, like Grace of Kings and Wall of Storms, I feel like the writing style is still consistent. It's similar, but you can feel the grandness of the scale with Wall of Storms starting to happen that carries on through the rest of the series. So
I think a lot of people who have issues with Grace of Kings, it's more that the narrative is so distant and very bird's eye view and jumping heads all the time.
True.
And then in Wall of Storms, we follow like almost like multi-POV traditional style. Because Ken, like specifically, when he got feedback from the first book, people had issues with that. So he very intentionally like changed his writing style in the second book onward. So I do think that it is different, but that's okay, Evie, that you like Grace of Kings better. That's fine.
I am interested in this question because it's something I've thought about a lot. Do you all just straight read a book at a time or multi-read? I mean, we don't even need to talk to Kyle about this question. I think I'll just mute him. But I mostly actually just read a book. I get confused if I'm reading too many things at once. Not really confused, but it always kind of pulls me out of the thing I'm reading. I don't feel like I'm fully in it and concentrated. If I then like the next day I'm reading something else, and then 3 days later I come back to the first thing, and I don't really like doing that. Sometimes when I was employed and I was actually going regularly out of the flat to travel through the city, which takes a long time, I was listening to audiobooks, and then I would have a thing going on audio and a thing going on paper. But what about the rest of you?
So I used to be only one book at a time, dadgummit. Like, and then maybe a short story collection at the same time. But I'm actually going to show you all of the books that I have going on right now. Actively.
Madness.
What am I doing to myself?
Love it.
Madness.
You're
I'm so proud of you,
insane.
Evie. I'm so proud of you.
To be fair, the Iliad
I'm tempted
is
to kick you
poetry.
just out of revulsion and confusion.
I mean, to give myself to, rationalize it to myself. Ship of Magic is a reread. Technically, Gardens of the Moon is a reread. This is a short story collection. The Iliad is poetry. The Russian Fairy Tales is obviously short story collection. So technically, the only new thing is Titus Grown for me.
Oh,
Those are all heavy books.
I was going to say, you're reading Titus Grown and Malazan and the Iliad and all at the same time.
The Iliad is so good. This Emily Wilson translation. If Alan is here, yes, you are hearing what you are about to hear. It is the superior translation, more than Robert Fagel's.
Goodness.
Yeah, I really want to try the new translation.
I don't think he is, or at least I haven't seen him so far. Maybe
He would be
he's
yelling.
lurking.
He would
I
be
was going to say
yelling.
that will bring him out if he's lurking. Yeah.
I just need a different book for every bathroom.
There you go. Or a
How many
shampoo.
bathrooms do you have?
My new house we're moving into has literally 5 like toilets. Like it's 4.5 baths. So I'm gonna need to start reading more books because right now I only read 1 or 2 at a time.
Every time I talk to Americans about their houses, I'm like, "You live on another planet.
Yeah.
What is wrong with your country?"
Gastroenterologist, you know, if you need 5 bathrooms.
I wasn't being serious. No.
Okay.
I didn't buy the house because it had 4.5 bathrooms. The house just came with 4.5 bathrooms. We bought it because it had a bar, which might be why it has 4.5 bathrooms. That's a separate issue, right? But it's for guests, so they have places to puke. I think more than
Brian's on his way over right now.
Yeah. I have a bar overlooking the Hudson River. I was like, no, I'm buying this house. So
damn,
that's cool.
Yeah, that was my. We're moving this year, but I generally read a book for pleasure and one I'm beta reading for somebody, and I'll have to kind of break that up.
Yeah, different like sides of your brain.
Kinda, yeah, and also like usually when you're beta reading, it's not great. I mean, it's not ready for the public yet, so you'll run into patches where you're just like, I got to stop for a while because this is rough. Not because the author's not good. Every book is bad at that stage. So then I go to something polished and it smooths my life over. When I'm beta.
I've been reading so much less physically because I'm back in school, and like during the pandemic, I went back to school and I was like studying like neuroscience and like stuff where I actually had to like read a lot of stuff, and my reading was not impacted at all. I think just because I was doing nothing else with the time. So it's like, well, yeah, but then I have like 5 hours of recharge. I can go and read all the fiction I need to read. But now I am back in the world. So it's like I have to read. I just finished this book, Diary of a Nobody, which was written in the 1800s about 19th century Victorian era clerks. And I have to examine it as a historical document and then write what we can learn about their culture. And doing that is so exhausting that I'm like, I look at Guy Jin and I'm like, I can't be in fiction right now. So it's just like my reading has just tumbled.
I always have 2 books going at once. One Audible, one written. The Audible for me is almost 9 out of 10 times lit RPG. Just because I've narrowed down the narrators to real actors that I know. Even the good lit RPG, there's enough of it now that's being read by real fantastic actors that it's no drop off at all. But there's no way I would do Shogun or Malazan or anything like that in Audible. I mean, there's just
Brian, do they read the stat blocks?
some of them do, and some of them what they'll do is they'll go character sheet and they'll say press fast forward to the next chapter if you don't want to hear the stat box.
I was curious.
Some of them do, some of them don't. And as you get deeper into these series, and these guys have a million abilities, all at different levels. Some of them, Joe, they read them all individually. It could be a 5-minute stretch of just reading the character sheet.
That's good to know. If I ever have a phase of insomnia, I'll have to pick some of those up. That sounds really perfect for that. I just this afternoon, my best friend came over. We were playing some board games, and afterwards we were talking about books. And he's of a similar age to me, so we had like an old man grumbling session about lit RPG and how it just doesn't make any sense, and why does anyone with a brain read it?
Oh my God, we got to go on together.
Why do you like this
program? Yeah,
this isn't being old. This is just being you.
I gave it a try. I feel like I'm allowed to actually have an opinion about it now. I realized I had an opinion I wasn't allowed to have, really. And I was just like, kids these days, and then I was like, no, I'm going to, like, everybody loves Dungeon Crawler Carl. So I gave it a try, I really tried. I got halfway through that.
Like, I liked it, but as I was reading it, I was so sure that I don't like that genre. Like, I'm like, this book happens to be very enjoyable to me, but I just know that, like, generally speaking, I don't like any of this, like, general setup. And so I'm going to read that series and then probably not really read. Maybe, like, we'll try 1 or 2 more. But
I just constantly kept feeling stupid that I wasn't actually playing a video game. You know, like
There's
everything
an
about it
actual
made me
story.
think
Like there
it would
is like
it
actual
would be
things
more
going on.
fun to, yeah, but there are actual stories in video games too. And like I just kept thinking it would be more fun to actually play a video game. Reading someone describe a video game,
and I'll agree with you, Matt, except for the development cycle of video games is 5 years. So
there are so many video games
so
out there
many
that I
games,
haven't
though.
played. I mean,
I don't know.
I just want to say real quick to Rogue, Cradle is not lit RPG. Cradle is progression fantasy, which is a type, like lit RPG is like within progression fantasy. But lit RPG has like actual stats. So like Dungeon Crawler Carl, he's like, character gains 2 charisma points. That's like lit RPG. Whereas Cradle is just like they're trying to train to get
better at things.
You could rewrite Cradle as a lit RPG. It would just take about a few hours.
You definitely could.
I wish you would,
but it's not. I can't. Brian, you're one of the few people who just outright dislikes Cradle, which is fine. It's fine. I enjoy it.
And I'm on book 12.
12 if you dislike it. Like Ethan is such a good character. That's like the guy who kept me going.
I'm on book 12, and I'm waiting for it to get good.
No, it's not going to get better.
I do not understand that kind of patience. I'm on book 12 and I'm waiting for it to get good.
He's on the last book. He's being facetious. No. He knows it's not going to be good.
Matt, you encourage this behavior.
If I did not have a channel, I probably would have stopped the series around 8 or 9.
That's
but
fair.
Now that there's a channel, I'm like, you know what? And because a lot of my channel does tend to talk a little bit more about lit RPG than other booktubers, at least in this corner of booktube, I want to feel like, all right, I know it from beginning to end. I have an opinion on it that while others may not share, at least they can't tell me, well, you didn't even read the finale or you don't know how it ends.
You didn't read up to book 12 where it gets good.
Right.
Nobody says it gets good at book 12. They all say it gets good
at book 3. Andrew's already told me it peaked out at 9 and forget about it after that.
Andrew's wrong. It peaks out at 10.
3 is
or
like
10. He might have said 10. Yeah.
There are so many books I want to read.
Was very, very good.
There are so many books I want to read. If you want to make sure I never read a series, tell me it gets good at book 3.
Right.
Okay, but,
I will not.
All right, Malazan.
I will not.
This is a perception thing.
Malazan is good in the first book.
Listen,
Cradle.
It gets better.
For the record, I don't think Matt will like Cradle. I would not recommend it to him.
No.
But if I was to recommend it, if I was to recommend it to you, the first 3 Cradle books together are like 800 pages. So it's as if you were just to read a long book. So people have the perception of like a small book being like that's the entry, but it's like you will read 1,000-page Malazan book and give it a try. But 3 short books is too much time commitment. But it's less pages than that. But the difference being is that I wouldn't tell you to wait 3 books because I don't think 3 books would change your mind. But if I did think like Cradle would get really good for you in particular in the 3rd book, it would be less pages than you trying Shogun.
You know, one thing though about lit RPG,
I DNF Shogun.
That I what?
No, I didn't actually DNF Shogun.
I'm over here having a Fred Sanford big one heart attack.
I was doing too much at once. Beginning of last year, I was involved in lots of readathons and read-alongs and read of this and that.
Oh yeah, I forgot you were a part of that. You were in it for like 2.5 minutes. I totally forgot.
Yeah. I read a few hundred pages of Shogun, and with everything else that I was meant to be reading by a particular date, I was like, I have to cut some things. And what I decided my criteria was anything that I'm trying to host on my channel, of course, I'm going to try and stick with. And that was Realm of the Elderlings read along. Like nobody else stuck with it, but whatever. And I dropped everything else. So I didn't read Game of Thrones or Song of Ice and Fire all the way through for the 7th time, or finish Shogun. But I'll come back to it. Soft DNF. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, Anita.
Yeah.
I do realize it's actually probably a work of genius, and
it is.
I need to give it a bit more of a chance.
I mean, I've been
Joe's shaking his head.
I'm on day 632 of Duolingo Japanese, and so I understand most of what's written in there because it's pretty basic stuff. I love it. I mean, I wish I hadn't heard that the Asian saga there's some pretty big, huge books that are significant drop-offs from Shogun quality-wise, or I may just have gone right through the Asian Saga this year.
I mean, so far I don't know that I like Taipan. I think I liked more than Shogun, but I don't think it's a better book than Shogun. It just happened that I read it all at once. But Taipan is really good.
It's not that one. It's the next one, I think, that I heard just okay.
So, yeah, Gaijin is the one that I'm reading now. Not far enough to have an opinion, but everybody else seems to be liking it so far. The one that I hear consistently is not good is Whirlwind, but that takes place in the 1970s, and it's in Iran. So it's not.
Think, which one is the one that's got the romance mostly? Is that Gaijin?
I think that's Whirlwind.
That's Whirlwind.
I don't know for sure, having not read them, but I think I hear there's a really long romance Whirlwind that people don't like. I'm just planning to not read that one. So
got it.
I kind of agree, Anitha. Like the certainly at the beginning of Shogun, I disliked Blackthorn quite intensely. Like he just seemed like yeah, but then actually almost everybody in the book seemed like a dick at that point anyway.
Yeah,
you know, like there wasn't anybody in the beginning of the book where I thought, oh, I can latch onto you because you seem like an actually good person that I enjoy spending time with. No, they're all pretty unpleasant people.
There's the good comment. Look at Anita's new one, right? Talk to people who were colonized to see if it gets better, right? The other thing about Shogun that I feel is that there's this huge value it presented to people when it was released, that it was this like exposure to Japanese culture that we didn't have in the West. It was like this open, like Japan was kind of secretive and kind of cool and like new, and the Japanese economy was like leading the world at the time, like late 70s, 75 it came out, and it was this amazing thing for people. But like, you know, we don't need that intro anymore. For someone who doesn't know a lot about Japanese culture, I'm sure it's also equally cool to get this exposure. But if you've seen all the freaking samurai movies and you've like studied this stuff over like decades, then it doesn't I don't like, for me it doesn't hold as much interest. But I felt the same way about, I don't know if anyone remembers like The Ninja by Eric Van Loosbader, came out around 1980. Similar like impact. It was just so, it wasn't a good book, but it was so cool. The stuff he was talking about was like neat and mysterious and exotic, and we hadn't heard it before to a certain extent in the West.
And now when someone says ninja, you roll your eyes. Like, oh, ninjas again.
The way people in Japan were doing then, if that book had been released in Japan and they translated it, I'm sure people would have been like, "What? What is wrong with you?" But for and I read it when I was like 12. I like the coolest thing in the world. Yeah, I love that book. I read everything Loosbader wrote for like 20 years because that book blew my mind. But it wasn't good.
I think there's a book, Mushima.
Musashi. Yeah, I want to read that.
There we go. That's like supposed to be like a response to Shogun, but it's from an actual Japanese author.
It was written much before Shogun.
Oh, really?
Oh, Eiji Yoshikawa.
I thought it was a response to that.
That's like the Gone with the Wind of Japan.
Yeah,
and many people like it a lot. I thought it was a little soap opera like, but it is generally highly regarded.
Is it about the historical figure of Musashi?
Yeah, and it's where a lot like Vagabond is the story of the Musashi books. Right?
Okay,
that's where we get a lot of our like idea of what Musashi's life was like. A lot of it was from those books, which were not new.
No. 1800s, I think, or like early 1900s. Yeah, I think so. I know a passing amount of Japanese stuff from school and just general interest. And the thing that so there was things in Shogun that definitely drove me crazy that I think like speak exactly to what Joe was speaking, which is like, and I mentioned this a little as a joke when Brian said he was reading it, which is the seppuku stuff. Dude, they just didn't. This is just a bastardization of a culture. When you like every 5 minutes, they're like, "Oh, so sorry, I shall go commit seppuku," and I'm like, "This did not happen this often." Like this
was in Japanese. It was written in the late 30s.
Late 30s.
The Musashi by Eiji Yoshikawa, the books were written in Japanese in the late 30s. I don't think they were in English until like the 70s or early 80s. I read it in the early 80s, but that's where the story of Musashi got tied. So it's like King Arthur, right? You have some version, and then everyone else reads that version. All the later versions of King Arthur are informed by that. That's the same with those books and the Musashi legend. Kinda.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Roughly. 1935, yeah. 35 to 39. Ninjas were so hot in the 80s. Oh, I love that era. Yes. Yes, they were.
Totally other thing, which was a question Shep asked a long time ago, and I started. His Dark Materials, what do people think?
Haven't read it.
I don't know.
It's good.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like the last book very much at all, because for the same reason I don't like the last book in Narnia, which, like, the last book of Narnia, he's like, hey guys, did you understand that I am Christian and I shall tell you all of my Christianness? Like, do you get it? And I'm like, could you just tell me a story? Whereas the same thing with his Dark Materials. In the last book, he's just like, do you guys get that I think that, like, this is all ridiculous? Do you guys get it? Like, there is no God. Do you get it?
I just want to make sure you
I'm
get
like,
my message. Yeah.
But they're very imaginative books. Like, I think I would have loved them if I read them at like 12, 13 when I was still forming my ideas about the world. But
yeah,
the third book is a little rough.
Yeah, I read them, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago or something, and I quite enjoyed them. You know, they didn't blow my mind, but I enjoyed them. But yeah, the for me, it's always the if I hit a bit in a book where I feel like the author is talking to me, I get irritated with the author. You know, I don't want to have a conversation. I might want to have a conversation with the author. I still look forward to a day when I will be in an actual pub physically with Joe. You know, I look forward to having a beer with the author. So that kind of talking to the author I like. But if you're writing fiction, I'm not here to have a conversation with you. And if it starts feeling like the author is trying to make a point to me through his fiction, and it's just really transparent and overbearing, I'm just like,
So you're a big fan of Ayn Rand, right?
Matt, I'm going to turn the camera off for a little bit because I'm going to go make some lunch, but I'll be back on if you're going to be on for a little bit.
If you're not spending hours on lunch, we'll probably be here, or at least I will.
Depends how much I burn.
I'll probably be gone, Brian. So it was nice to finally talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely, Paul, for sure. I'll get you on that lit RPG bandwagon better.
For sure. Also, while I have you real quick, I think we're the only two booktubers that worked in nightclubs. So we have that going for us.
What are you, a bartender? What do you do?
I'm a bartender, but like now I work in a restaurant, but for years I worked in a nightclub.
Awesome. Well, you and I have stories. We'll have to come on each other's channels and talk nightclub because, yeah, I didn't
meet Prince. You have some cooler stories than me, but absolutely.
Yeah. Sadly, my last conversation with him was not a fun one. So I wish, you know, you don't know when the last time you're going to talk to somebody is. So it's, you know, yeah, he was something else. Cool. All right. Well, I'll be back, or I will be in chat, or I will be in somewhere, but the kitchen is calling.
Thanks for coming, Brian. If we don't see you.
You got it. You got it. Okay. I'll be back.
Thank you, horrendous. Yeah, I always go back and forth between, like, it's just another number, you know, like 2000.
It's a good number though.
Yeah, but like
it's twice.
I don't know. I think it's an interesting thing that we don't think that like 1995 is an awesome number, but
I was gonna say, Matt, how dare you not celebrate that 1,821st subscriber?
It's just a round number, man. Like,
what's the monetization cutoff?
1,000.
That's 1,000. That's a long time ago. Yeah.
Oh.
It doesn't. 2,000 doesn't make any kind of difference, like mechanically on YouTube or anything. It's just another round number. They don't send you anything. You get like a cardboard plaque. No, you don't.
Do you guys tell people in your real life that you have channels? Like, have you ever had to mention it to somebody or bring it up? Besides, like, I mean, obviously, like, Evie, your husband knows,
sometimes.
My coworker follows me on Instagram because I mother hen her so much. Since she's in Canada, it's not like I can do anything, but like I feel very protective over her. And so she's very far away from home. So I like, you know, I mother hen her, and she found out about my channel because of Instagram, and then she made She felt so bad. She announced it to the team. She's like, "Oh yeah, you know, Evelyn's got a channel." I'm like, "No one's supposed to know about that." She's like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry." I'm like, "It's fine. Don't worry about it." And then as soon as the bingo card is ready, everyone, as soon as I did the Simon Jimenez interview, I literally sent the link to everyone, my entire team, so my entire team knows regardless. I'm like, I don't care. Cat's out of the bag. I don't care. I'm really proud of this. So
yeah, I'm work people. I try not to expose my channel to, right? Because there's stuff I talk about on my channel that I wouldn't necessarily be talking to people at work about. Whether it's not that I wouldn't talk to them about books, but I also talked about depression, like not necessarily what you want to put out there at work. But my real life friends, like my offline friends, all know about it pretty much. And it's interesting. I try not to take it personally, but like one of my best friends has never watched anything on my channel. And then one of my other best friends, who doesn't even like fantasy or science fiction, watches every now and then just to sort of see what I'm doing. You know, he cares about me having a channel. He doesn't care about my content at all. But
my wife doesn't even watch my stuff, man. Don't take it personally.
Yeah, no, I don't take it personally. I don't take it personally. I think it's more that actually the friend who doesn't is someone who, like, he's read all the fantasy. He knows Michael Moorcock personally.
Oh, he's just snubbing you. Yeah, he's just snubbing you.
No, he's just like, I don't really need to watch videos about people talking about books that I've read and talked about forever. You know, he's just, I just don't think he's that interested.
It'd be hurtful if he was really into booktube.
Yeah, exactly. If he was like a rabid Philip Chase fan and he didn't watch my channel, I'd be
never
like,
seen one of your videos. Oh yeah, you do have a channel.
You have a problem here, you know.
I had a really random thing happen to me like a while back. I was at work and like I live in like a small town in the middle of Canada. There's like 40,000 people here. It is not where the happenings happen. And this woman came up to my bar and she was sitting there and she was reading a Stephen King book. So I started talking to her a little bit and we started talking about books and she just got into like Brandon Sanderson. She was reading A Song of Ice and Fire. So, you know, we're talking about books while she's, you know, like, having her drink. And she's like, you know, have you ever heard of this guy on YouTube, Mike's Book Reviews? And I was like, yeah, like he's a friend of mine. Like
I know him.
She's like, really? And she's like, and I'm like, yeah, I associate with him sometimes. Like he's a cool guy. And she's like, yeah, like we're friends. Like we message on Instagram all the time about books. And I was like, that is nuts. I was like, that'll never happen to me again.
The world is strange. Back in the 90s, me and a guy I worked with who was one of my good friends, who actually also watches my channel. He might be watching right now. Hi, Andre, if he happens to be. Andre and I were working together and we heard about this new thing called podcasts, right? And this was back when podcasts were really, really new. And I started reading up on it and I was like, any fucker can make a podcast. So Andre and I started sitting down once a week, eating pizza and drinking a lot of beer. And in one episode, we would speak German. And in the next episode, because friends of mine from outside Germany heard I had a podcast, we would do one in English. So we were alternating. So my bad German one time and his bad English the next time. And
the Matt Rogan experience.
Yeah, no, it was actually called Podcastra, which was a joke
Books
about
by day, Matt Rogan podcast by night, all day.
We called it Podcastra because there is a beer made in Hamburg where we lived called Astra. So it was Podcastra, and we even ripped off the Astra logo. Anyway, nice. We're doing this for a couple of years. I think we got up to like 1,000 regular listeners. And one day I'm late for work because I have to go to the doctor. I go to the doctor and then I'm on the street after the doctor visit and I get on the phone. I'm waiting for a light to change. I get on the phone. I call work and I'm like, okay, I'm just leaving the doctor. I'll be there in like 20 minutes. And the guy next to me says, are you Matt from Podcastra? And I was like,
wow,
this is really kind of creepy. I was like, yeah. And the weird thing is podcasts, unlike booktube, podcasts don't have a specific home, you know, so you don't have a community. I mean, you could create a Discord community, but Discord didn't exist back then. So there wasn't a home. So you don't know who's listening.
Yeah, no comments.
Yeah, no comments
Yeah.
under your videos or under your audio. Every now and then we would get an email. We had an email address sent up for it. And we had a couple of people we knew were like hardcore fans, and we would write emails back and forth. But otherwise, no idea who your audience is. And here's some random dude who recognizes my voice, because we didn't have pictures of ourselves out there. He only recognizes just my voice on the phone. And I was like, this is a little weird. This makes me kind of uncomfortable.
Tharnal, Matt's first stalker.
Totally. We actually had, we had some really weird experiences doing the podcast. We did one podcast that was recorded entirely in nightclubs in Hamburg with one of our fans who lived in New York. And he was a German who had moved to New York. He'd been listening to us forever. And when he came back to Germany for a visit, to visit his family in another city, he specifically came to Hamburg to see us. And we were like, that's also maybe stalkery, but as long as there's two of us and one of him, we can go out and do a recording with him. And we had this really, really fun, weird, drunken episode where we recorded all in nightclubs with him. Very strange. Yeah.
Yeah. The way I found out about podcasts is people telling me for years that I should start a podcast. They're like, you know, Kyle, you never shut up. You should start a podcast. And I was like, what is that? And sometimes they say like, or a YouTube channel.
Start a what? Yeah, I think back in the day when it was really, really cool to read Wired magazine, I think that's where I discovered podcasts. It's hilarious to think, like now it's hilarious to me, and for 18-year-olds like Kyle, it's probably ridiculous to even imagine. There was a day when the best way to learn what was going on in the internet was to read a magazine in paper. Yeah,
That's true.
That
it
is
was
before my
like all of the coolest technology shit was in a magazine, a paper magazine,
that you bought in a newsstand,
which I bought every month because I worked in the field. You know, I was really interested in all this new technology stuff that was going on, and I read Wired magazine every month. And that's changed. I mean, they still exist, but eventually they realized, oh yeah, this thing we've been writing about for a while, we should be writing in that thing rather than on paper. Yeah, exactly. And copying down URLs that were printed in a magazine so that you could load them in a browser. It's hilarious.
I joined the internet era during the LimeWire times.
How many viruses did you get on your computer?
So I was smart, so not very many, but that's still like, 7. Like, I don't know, like you just pay attention to what you're doing and put in the right ad blockers, and usually
I was lime wiring at work because they had a better internet connection than I did at the web agency I worked at, and we worked on Macs, and Macs were basically immune to viruses back in the day because nobody bothered to make a virus for a Mac.
It only sold 7 of them.
Yeah, and all of them to designers like me, so yeah, we didn't have to worry about that. But my entire music collection used to be a LimeWire collection back in the day.
My dad was one of the early adopters of Napster. I'll never know how early, but I remember when I was a kid, he was like, yeah, there's this new thing, Napster. He was explaining it to me, and he was always mad that there wasn't enough people seeding stuff. And then as I saw it progress, where he's like, now a bunch of people are doing it, and he's like, now there's a lawsuit, and there's a whole. So I witnessed as a child the whole evolution of Napster, but I don't know how early he was. But I remember it looked very, very basic at the very beginning.
Oh yeah,
and he was explaining it to me, and
yeah,
that all went away.
that was
Lars
me too. Yeah, and just for everyone out there listening, in case there's any confusion, I'm not on my channel recommending doing any of this, especially if you live in Germany, because oh my God, the Germans, they will track your ass down
There's so many bad
Like,
ways that a sentence can end. Start with the Germans.
I know. I know people in Germany who have had criminal charges and fines for downloading things that they shouldn't have been downloading. You know, so it's serious over here. Yeah. Napster would give you a rare recording of Pearl Jam covering Nirvana, and it would be purely to deliver a virus.
The like during the LimeWire days, like there'd be songs that were mistitled, and you could tell, like people would then start calling it by that name, and so there'd just be like a song that was popular, and nobody would say the right name for it, and you could just tell it's because everybody was LimeWiring the song, and so it just like lost the name.
One of the best things I ever downloaded, which actually at the time I downloaded it, I think was legal, was the Grey album. Do you guys know about the Grey album? DJ Danger Mouse, as a promo, took Jay-Z's Black album and the Beatles' White album and
did amazing already.
Did a mashup of them and released it for free on the net. And it's a whole album. I mean, it's like a full album. It's like 18 songs or something. It's called the Grey album. Like, yeah, exactly. And it was so good. It was so good. I mean, he did it really well. And he did it, of course, without any kind of permission. And Jay-Z said, "Oh my God, man, that's so cool." And whoever at the time owned the rights to the Beatles' entire catalog said, "We're going to bury you."
You mean Michael Jackson?
No, it was before Michael Jackson bought it. Because he didn't buy it until I think early 2000s or late 90s. It was a sensation for like a week on the internet. Everyone downloaded this thing for free before the lawyers caught up with DJ Danger Mouse and it all had to get taken down. Yeah. Raph, welcome.
Raph, you're muted.
You're muted, or at least we can't hear you. I don't know why, but yeah. And it's so good. It's so good. The Grey album, I encourage people to check it out. I'm not sure if you can actually find it anywhere anymore.
I'm sure at this point you probably can. Somebody probably kept it and re-uploaded it somewhere.
Yeah. I had it on my computer for decades because it was so good. And I especially loved it because there's a song on it, which is actually a song by Jay-Z, because Jay-Z has the same birthday as me. And Jay-Z's birthday song, where he has samples of his mother talking about him, was then mixed with, I forget which song from the Beatles, but it was such a good version. I mean, I think the song's called December 4th. And the Jay-Z version original is also pretty good. I like Jay-Z, but the DJ Danger Mouse version was so much better.
So note to self, I will be able to remember your birthday now, Matt. Because your birthday is the same birthday as Jay-Z, which is also the day that I was supposed to have been born.
Ah.
I share my birthday with Beyonce, so it all comes together.
There you go. Now we can hear you, Ralph.
I have no idea what went wrong, but sometimes my browser does weird things.
Browsers be like that.
Mine does too. You should see my search history. My browser just looks for things that I would never consider searching for. That's the story I'm sticking to.
Totally not you.
No.
Yeah, Daniel says the mighty thunderous pop of the beer bottle blew out your microphone. So.
That might have been it. Congratulations, Matt, for your 2,000 subscribers.
Thank you. My arbitrary number day. Woo.
No, but it's interesting. Like a year ago, I remember when you had your 1,000 subscriber party, just like shortly after me, and you've blown past me so fast. It's impressive.
I really don't know why or how, considering I took a 5-month break where I put out 0 videos. Like I don't know, but it just keeps sort of rolling once you have a certain number of videos in your
Lord of the
catalog.
Rings collection.
I think the algorithm secretly likes breaks, because I didn't post a video for like 7 months and I almost doubled my subscribers during that time. So like, I don't know what
They're just
What's
giving
going
you
on?
subs, trying to lure you back to creating content for them.
Maybe. I don't know.
That might be it. I mean, obviously, I think there's clear reasons why you are successful at this, Matt, and these are your skills. Plus, you have a deep voice. Deep voices go really well on BookTube.
You know that this
YouTube
isn't my
in
real
general.
voice, right?
The camera
Hi
turned
guys,
off.
it's Matt on books.
Matt
I-
sounds like Mike Tyson.
I have a filter in Final Cut Pro that I put on my voice all the time, and I actually do, but that's actually just to make it sound a little smoother. But no, I do have a deep voice, and it does. I've had people. My dad said this. I think I was talking about this last pub when I was in university. I didn't have a computer, and I was constantly having to book a computer in the school's computer lab so that I could do my design work, and like everything I was doing had to be done on a computer. And I wrote my dad, who had some money and had divorced father guilt. So I said to him, you know, it'd be really awesome. The best way you could support my education is if you bought me a computer.
Yeah.
And he was like, he was a businessman. So he didn't say yes. He said, prove it. Show me. Give me a presentation of what you need a computer for. Yeah, I mean, that was my dad. Typical my dad.
I know
And
exactly that type of dad, which is why I haven't talked to mine for like a year now.
He was actually he was actually an awesome dude. Like, don't get me wrong. I loved my dad, and he was very, very kind and supportive to me, but he never gave anything away, you know?
Yeah, that's the part I meant. Like the rest,
it was always like demonstrate why. And I was like, yeah, okay, no problem. So I put together a bunch of animations and things that I had done in university already. I put them on a VHS cassette back in the day. I did voiceover for the whole thing, explaining what I had done and how I did it and why I needed a computer. And I sent it to him. And he called me after he and my stepmom had watched it. And he said, yeah, I've been talking to your stepmother, and we've decided you're not getting a computer. And I was like, oh. And he was like, we've decided you need to go into radio. I was like, what? He's like, I never realized it, but you've got a good voice for that. I was like, yeah, okay, great. Thanks, Dad. But are you going to buy me a computer?
I think your dad was also trying to tell you that you were ugly.
Could also be, although I wasn't visible in the video. Yeah.
Great face for radio.
All right, guys, I gotta get going. I told myself I would do half an hour, and it's an hour and a half. So
that is the
nice
right
to be able to
attitude,
join
Carl.
for once. I always miss these. And Matt, congratulations on 2K.
Thanks, man. Thanks for coming by.
See you guys next time.
Good to see you.
Hi, Kyle.
Yeah.
Hi, Kyle.
Yeah. But I think it's interesting. It's something I think about a lot because obviously
my voice.
Your voice too, Matt, all the time. Us blind people are very focused on like voices and stuff like that.
Sure.
Nah, actually, that's bullshit. But no, I often think about like what we can do with BookTube things, with how we do videos and stuff like that can make it more interesting or whatever. Because when you watch other parts of YouTube, people have gone into all kinds of directions, whereas a lot of BookTube is still just people talking at their phone, which I think is great, that it doesn't require you to actually know a lot of like editing and stuff like that.
It's almost all talking heads. Even the people who are doing it really well and have 1 million subscribers.
Yeah.
It's basically like Daniel Green isn't doing that much different than most of us, but he does have very good production quality.
Yes,
and he has an extremely good work ethic. Like he gets his shit done on time regularly.
Yes,
and he has learned to be much more animated.
Yeah, compared to like early videos. Yes.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, remember a few years ago? I think it was actually when COVID started, like 2020, where skits were the big thing in BookTube.
Yeah.
So like people were doing like bookish skits. And we're getting like thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of that's how Man Carrying Thing got so big. He just did skits.
Yeah.
Well, and he still just does skits. Yeah. I mean, that's that.
He did that
channel.
video where he did get Wheel of Time wrong. and I'm saying this as someone who really does not like Wheel of Time as books. But he made this weird claim about like why the show, the first season, was bad. And he's like, they turn it into a whodunit about the question, who's the dragon reborn? And I, dude, that's exactly what the book does as well. It's that's exactly
just both of them do it really badly because it's really obvious from the beginning.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's what
people can like sign off and be like, finally, we talk about Wheel of Time.
Exactly. Shit talking Wheel of Time.
I am not
Pub
in this
tradition.
case, I was not shit talking it. I tried to explain that, you know, to make the claim the series is bad because it turns it into a whodunit. It's like, that's misreading the text because the text does the same thing. Just because you figured it out in the first chapter does not mean that the book is not trying that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah,
so
I mean, I've only read
experience.
250 pages of the Wheel of Time, and I got it already in that amount of pages. Like, oh, it's this guy.
Yeah, which is sad because there are good bits in the Wheel of Time. There are really good bits in the Wheel of Time. Unfortunately, they're in the Wheel of Time and not, you know, just the good bits.
They should let Brandon Sanderson do a good bits edit and just make one book out of it. I'd probably read that.
I don't think that would work because
I was joking, Raph. I was joking.
Yeah, I know.
I don't seriously think it would work either. I don't think you can condense 14 books into one.
Someone couldn't. Brandon Sanderson couldn't.
I was gonna say, yeah, whatever.
I also think that the things that make Wheel of Time good, or the things that Robert Jordan is really good at, are not the things that Brandon Sanderson is really good at. Both have like strengths, and Robert Jordan is really good at doing like cosmic horror elements. And there are these cosmic horror elements in Wheel of Time that are really cool. Brandon Sanderson is not a cosmic horror guy. Brandon Sanderson is someone who does very like 3-dimensional action sequences really well. You can see that video game influence.
Desperately wanted to say something.
Yeah.
Mainly to get away from the Wheel of Time and Brandon Sanderson talk. Please, God, say that your answer is neither of these related. But Raph, what are you reading?
Yeah, nothing really. No, I did read books last week, and then right now I decided that tomorrow I will start to finally read To Like the Lightning, which is the other book that everyone is constantly bullying me to read.
Yes,
no one has
read
done
it.
So. No one has done so for a couple of months, so now I can start it without feeling like I'm giving into peer pressure.
I'm pretty sure that I pressured you to read it in the pub 2 weeks ago.
Are you trying to imply that me saying that you need to read The Spear Cuts Through Water is peer pressuring you, and so subsequently that makes you not want to read it?
Evie, not every conversation is about The Spear Cuts Through Water.
To be fair, that is sort of the problem. I have always been very difficult with recommendations in any form, shape, or form.
If anyone likes it, Raph won't. Or actually refuses to. There's a difference.
See, but that's kind of the point, because if a lot of people pressure me to do something, I will hate it when I do it. So I'll wait for the whole thing to die down in my mind so I can actually approach it without weird, expectations, which is
can we make Evie's head pop?
That was going to be my next comment after I responded to Ron. So before we get into, make my blood pressure boil, Ron, I tried reading To Like the Lightning. I only got a couple of pages in, and I bounced right off of it. That's completely wrong time, wrong book for me. So I have every intention of starting it again. Ida, I hope that's a joke. Genuinely.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it would be good for your health, Ida, if you clarified. Are you actually joking, or was that a serious question? I mean, there are people who don't like it.
Please.
I think she's actually not joking. Okay.
It's
all
fine.
Right.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
It's all right, Evie, if you need to turn your camera off for a minute. And
I did, however, finish last week. I finished the oldest book on my Goodreads currently reading list, which was there since January 2022.
That's not bad.
Well, I started Goodreads in January 2022, so no, I finished. To tie it back, I did finish Rebel's Creed by Daniel Green.
Oh, how was that?
Oh,
Yeah.
And
That's okay. So here's the thing. It's not the best thing I've ever read. Neither was the first one, Breach of Peace. I think they're both very interesting when looking at someone who becomes a writer, well, in this case self-published, but it doesn't really matter. Like someone who's a fan of fantasy and decides to write fantasy of their own. And it's very interesting to see what bits and pieces he puts into these things. You can see his influences very, very clearly. It's like he has a cop, and he's called Samuel. And I know for a fact that Daniel Green is a huge Discworld fan, and
sure,
so
even without knowing that he's a huge Discworld fan, if anyone's writing fantasy and they have a fantasy cop named Samuel,
yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
you're probably reading Pratchett, aren't you?
Yeah, which is good. People should read Pratchett, but there's a lot of these bits and pieces in there where you can see the direct influences on what he's doing, and I think so. I may be doing like a video on it because I think it's interesting to analyze that book, just to look at like how literary criticism works and how you can do these things, how you can trace influences. Whether you should do that is a different question, and Roland Barthes does have a few words to say on that subject. But I think because it is very clear cut in a lot of ways, it's interesting to see that. It's sort of like if you take like the surface off, and you can see the building blocks of that book, and that makes it interesting to read for me. You're like, yeah, this.
Daniel, the way you recommend a book to Raph is you tell him that no one's reading it.
That is the King of Elfland's Daughter, Raph. I've heard that book's really good.
I have read it before. You can't get me with.
And you failed to listen to my advice, Britton. I'm sorry. You can't tell him it's really good. You have to tell him, I heard of this book that I've never heard anyone has read. I don't know anyone I have no opinion about this book.
I mean,
no
here's
one I know has ever read
barely
it.
anyone's heard of. It's called the Worm Ouroboros.
Come on.
I've read that one as well.
I've even mentioned that book in a video.
I'm not sure how many people have actually read it. That's a different question. But
I haven't got there yet, but I do have it on my shelf.
It is interesting. Once again, it's one of those books. There's a bunch of these like older texts, so I think it helps to approach them nowadays more as like an historic artifact and not as something you read for entertainment.
Like, just opening up the first page of the Worm Ouroboros, I'm like, the reason I would read this is because it's foundational fantasy.
Yeah,
it was influential for its time. I would not read this because I think I'm going to love it, or because it would be an easy experience. I mean, it's the same reason I read Lamort Arthur. Like, I love Lamort Arthur. I've read it, like, I'm working on reading it the fourth time, I think, but it's 15th century language. It's not an easy read, and it's not a breezy fun read, but I also just love the Arthur story, so of course I'm going to read Lamort.
I think that approach helps because you can still love the book and be surprised by how modern it is. When I read Don Quixote for the first time, I was shocked by how incredibly modern that book is.
Yes, thank you. Sorry.
Speaking of Don Quixote, you can't see it.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
I've read it before. I read it a very long time ago. I think I might have needed to read it.
That's a chunky boy there, man.
High school, yeah. And Evie, I think in the pub, actually, like 2-3 weeks ago, recommended the Edith Grossman translation, and I thought I wouldn't mind rereading Don Quixote. So I just bought it.
Actually,
and it's a doorstop.
I'm going to be messaging my tattoo artist.
You're going to do an interview with Cervantes? No. Okay.
Necromancy is alive.
Yes. I'm going to be summoning his spirit from the depths of wherever he's at.
I mean, after actually managing to get Jimenez on your channel, I would not be too surprised if you got Cervantes to talk to you.
No, I'm going to message my my tattoo artist, and I'm going to add Don Quixote to my my list. So
the Picasso scribble or something else?
What now?
The Picasso scribble? This?
No. So actually, I'm looking at the first edition. So it's going to be like actually multiple lines. It's not just going to be Don Don Quixote. It's going to be like Hidalgo, Don Quixote, Menelo Monster or whatever.
Okay.
So I'm very excited about it.
What was interesting for me is like the version I read, or in this case listened to, was the Tobias Smollett translation, which is an 18th century British translation. So you have a lot of things that would not pass any form of translation today. Especially when it comes to the very blatant anti-Semitism that is in these books at parts. And it's interesting to see how Smollett wrote comedies in the 18th century in England. So he's a comedy writer and a translator. And you can see sort of like English 18th century comedic traditions kind of bleed into the Cervantes 17th century elements. It's really fascinating in that regard as well.
Jerome, I don't know what Jerome is responding to. Did you say you wanted to tattoo Rocinante?
The Expanse rules.
The Expanse totally rules. I just rewatched it recently. Shit. You know what I'm rewatching now? The Wire. Oh my God, it's so good.
You know, I've been wanting to rewatch that for a while.
It is so good. I mean,
I actually read Homicide last year. That's a fantastic book.
It's still really hard sometimes watching them deal with the technology they were dealing with from 20 years ago, because the whole thing, for those of you who don't know The Wire, it's about cops and criminals in Baltimore 20 years ago. And Baltimore back then was a very dangerous city, or at least in parts of it, and had a very high murder rate. It had the highest murder rate in the country based on the per capita murder rate, and was a big, it was a big drug place before they decided to, well, actually it was a big drug place after Richmond, Virginia. I know all this because I used to live in Richmond, Virginia. The drug trade moves drugs up the East Coast from Florida to New York, primarily. That's like where the drugs flow. And they stop along the way. And the place they used to stop that was in the middle was Richmond, Virginia. And Richmond, Virginia, when I was in university in Richmond, Virginia, had the highest murder rate in the country. Like 300,000 people in the city, we had 75 to 100 murders a year. It was crazy. And it was all black guys shooting black guys over drug-related stuff. Like there would be one or two white people would get killed in a year. Otherwise, it was all black guys. And it was mostly because these gangs that were moving drugs up the coast and stopping in Richmond, Virginia, and then distributing. That changed to Baltimore at some point, especially because the mayor, Marion Barry at the time, was a crackhead, and policing in Baltimore was horrible. But The Wire, to get back to what I was talking about, The Wire is the first crime show I ever saw where the criminals are characters. They're not just like two-dimensional threats. You know, they are fully blown characters. And the series spends as much time with the criminals as it does with the cops. And some of the cops are horrible people, and some of the criminals are very sympathetic. And it's just, it's such a good show. It's such a good show.
Stringer Bell is probably one of my favorite villains in any piece of media.
Stringer Bell is a piece of trash.
But that show captured corruption so perfectly.
Oh my God.
The majority of the corruption wasn't people making bad choices because they were getting paid off in some straightforward way. They were making choices that were bad for the city because that was the short-term way to keep their job, right? It was always like fudging numbers, not because you had some nefarious purpose, but just because your boss needed you to so they could win the next election. And I saw this from the other side because I worked at headquarters of Baltimore City School System. Not where I was making decisions, but I was around the people who were making decisions. I heard them make the decisions. I was, a fly on the wall. Yeah. And this is how it went. People would do things that were bad for kids, not because they were getting paid off by a drug dealer. It was because this was the way to make themselves look good for their next performance review.
Yeah.
And
It's almost
and
as if
that's-
those
that's
systems
also-
actually create that, like, right?
That's also what the thing I don't think I've ever seen any show that does this as well as The Wire.
Right.
Is it deals with
Oh.
every level.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
there are the kids on the corner, the 12-year-olds who are standing on the corner
Yep.
and are actually handing out heroin to the junkies, all the way up to
All the way.
a senator, you
Mhm.
know, and everybody in between
Yeah.
gets focused on in the show, and all of the cops in between, and the police commissioner down to the lowest beat cop who's walking around, and you know, it's such a
And none
such
of
an
them
amazing
caricatures. None of them are caricatures or flat or unsympathetic in some
No.
on some level. Every single level, you understand why they're doing what they're doing, and you may not agree with it. You get it.
Mhm.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I think that's
And
like one of the,
most of the characters have an amazing arc as well. They're not just like this is who they are and that's it, but they really develop, change, get worse. Some of them get better. Some of them get got. You know, it's really, really good. It's
Can't
such a
change
good
the
show.
game after all.
but I
Yeah.
think that's kind of one of the challenges that a lot of fantasy struggles with, and The Wire does that. I think a lot of like more realist fiction kind of does that as well. It's like to understand that a lot of the things we do, whether they're good things or bad things, a lot of stuff is dictated by the systems that we live in. And because fantasy so often is kind of built on, you know, on the monomyth, on the hero's journey, it kind of is built around, often at least, built around the idea that an individual can sort of defy all these pressures that systems put upon us. And there are obviously fantasy books that do that better, like the Malazan Book of the Fallen, for example, is really good at, you know, showcasing the systems that, you know, create people. And
So
stuff
first
like
law.
First Law, partly, I think he kind of fucks it up sometimes, but he does go down that direction in a lot of ways. And K. Jameson does it fairly well as well. There are fantasy books nowadays that, you know, write up against these ideas of the monomyth and so forth. But for a long time, fantasy is about people defying the system and actually getting away with it. And the sad reality is usually that's not what happens.
In The Wire, like so many people get crushed or outright murdered because they're not playing the system the right way, or the system just thinks they're in the way, or whatever. And I mean, like, there are numerous systems going on in the thing. I recently recommended, like, Tori and I talk a lot, and Tori is writing her second book in the trilogy. And there's a lot of politics. and she said, you know, I don't really know that much about politics, and I'm trying to kind of learn politics. And she said K-dramas is where she gets most of her political understanding from. And I while I was rewatching The Wire, I wrote her and I was like, you need to watch The Wire. You really need to watch The Wire. Like, if you want politics, there are, I mean, and often when a book or a show is focused on politics, it's not at all focused on the effect it has. It's focused on the people who are moving the pieces, pulling the strings, and that kind of thing, and all that like high level intrigue. And The Wire manages somehow to go from the really high level manipulative politics and corruption at the highest level, and you see how it affects everyone down to the street. You know,
guy's running for mayor, he makes a call, someone else makes a call, someone's making then there's a guy making a speech to a bunch of beat cops, the beat cops make a move, and some 12-year-old ends up in jail. And you see the dominoes. And they lay it all, but they lay it all out organically. It doesn't feel like they're just shoving it down your throat.
Yeah, and it's
really nice.
It jumps around so much.
Yeah.
Like normally, like if someone gave me kind of a description of what it's doing, I would think it would be really confusing to watch.
Yeah.
Because there are so many characters, and they're at every level of society, all the way to the top, all the way to the bottom. And
yeah, it's like an epic novel in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and you would think it would be like super confusing because there are like hundreds of characters, and they all have these complicated relationships, and who hates who, and who's allied with who, and whatever. And it manages to keep it all totally clear
because they're good actors.
They're good actors, and it's excellent writing.
Both, yeah. I mean, but the two combined, they really have personality. So you see a guy, and you're like, "Oh, I remember this guy," because He doesn't just look like everybody else and act like everybody
Yeah.
else.
Highway Cavalier. This is exactly what I'm talking about, though. House of Cards is good for high level politics, and that's it. Like it never gets below the level of the people who are sitting in the Capitol. You know,
falls apart in the last 2 seasons.
Overall, it's a really good series, but it's only dealing with very high level politics. You know, the guys who wear suits all the time and have fancy titles. And that's the amazing thing about The Wire is those guys are in it, but the idiot kid on the corner who's slinging heroin is also in it, you know, and they're all treated equally importantly, which is amazing to me. West Wing is hilarious. Totally different kind of thing, only dealing with that high level politics. But yeah.
Well, you don't like the I've never actually seen the West Wing, though I do like Aaron Sorkin a lot.
No, I mean, it is hilarious. Like it's remarkably good comedic writing.
Oh, okay.
Like, it's really.
I thought you meant like
it is funny.
I thought you were just being cynical there. I'm like,
no, it's really good.
Honest
like
politicians who actually want to make a difference in the world. Oh, that's ridiculous.
I think there are honest people that start politics and really want to change the world. The question is, and that kind of comes back again to that systemic thing, right? It's like once you've made it all the way up to a position of power, how much agency do you actually have left to actually do the things you set out doing when you decided to join like a political party at age 15, 16, 17 or whatever? And the question, that's a question that is really hard to answer because people that are up there will tell you none, because they have obviously changed over the time. And us from the outside will assume that they have a lot of agency. We're also mistrusting the people in power because they deserve to be mistrusted. Don't get me wrong, but it's just like one of those things that is hard to sort of, I think, figure out. It's like how much freedom of choice does a person in power have? And you can look at people like, not to drag this into like actual politics or whatever, like compare like Donald Trump as a president to other presidents of the United States. Like for someone who is as volatile in their decisions as Trump is, like how much was he actually able to change, or like how much stuff just happened because the system runs along no matter who's actually, you know, in power, so to speak. Like how much system inertia is there, I guess.
I have to interrupt briefly. John Cale, I always react very allergically to statements like this. Unless you actually know Aaron Sorkin or he has publicly said he hates women, which I'm assuming both of those are not true, then that's a bit of an inflammatory statement. There may be things he's done or said or written into his shows or whatever, which could be more woman friendly.
Social Network, and he was like,
but
"Oh,
like,
this is what he believes about women."
I hate women. That just seems a bit over the top to me.
I mean, just because someone writes something in a story about, I don't know, beating children, doesn't mean they necessarily agree with beating children.
Exactly.
They probably do, though.
They probably do. Those authors, you can't trust them.
As a parent, I'm just saying.
I mean, like my favorite example is I've seen it. I used to be more active on Facebook, and I used to follow actively what Steven Erickson was doing. And people love jumping on his back about all sorts of things, which are, especially if you know anything about the guy, always ridiculous. And there is some really rough stuff, especially later in the 10 Very Big Books. There is some really rough stuff that has to do with women. And somebody came at him about that, about being a misogynist because he wrote that. And it's like, no, like the opposite. He's showing you something that does happen to people in our actual real world and showing it in such a way that it's obvious he thinks it's horrible.
It's not endorsing it.
It's just because it's included in a book does not mean like that. We don't live in a two-dimensional world. It doesn't mean that he's actually endorsing it. You know,
I think that whole idea of like surface level reading or taking everything literally is something that comes up a lot. And I'm, people complaining that no one reads critically anymore and so forth. And I'm always thinking about that because usually people go and blame social media or whatever. And I don't think that's actually the case. But there is certainly a tendency nowadays to.
I think it's lead in the water, and there are just actually more stupid people in the world. No, I'm joking.
I do remember a few years ago there were people who were getting mad at Erickson for commenting on stuff. I don't remember exactly what it was.
Yeah,
In
it's
the viewer
I
spaces.
try not to
They
really
get mad at him because he
reacts.
reacts when people are idiots about his work.
I even remember Raph
When they're really
our-
persistently
our friend
idiots
Raph
about
here.
his work.
made
yeah.
a,
So
made a video about it.
to move away from that topic, because I feel like that will re-inflame the situation. Mitch, I have never actually seen The Wire, so that's why I'm very, very quiet, and I have no thoughts on
I
The
am
Wire.
curious what Tori would think of The Wire. And
Although the guy, I think the guy's name is Bubbles. Is that
Bubbles.
the guy who played the science professor in Community?
I think so.
I have no
And
idea.
I don't know
I
anything
would-
about shows. The last show I watched was Burn Notice.
Nice.
That's
I would have to look that up, Evie. I know The Wire much better than I know Community, especially the side characters.
He passed away recently. Michael, no.
No, that's Omar. He played
Omar
Michael
Cumming.
K. Williams played Omar.
Omar is, I've got to say, probably my favorite character in The Wire.
He's mine as well. I don't
Hands
know.
down. He's like, and also I think an uncharacteristically early representation of homosexuality in television. Like,
He
and
played a
also
couple of
one
gay
that
guys.
doesn't feel like it's we have to put a homosexual in the show. Like he
Isn't
is
it kind of
full-fledged
fucked
character.
up? Isn't it kind of fucked up that we're saying that you're just saying an early representation of homosexuality in television, and The Wire is like 20 years old, 15 years old?
Yeah, sure. It's a pity, but I think
Yeah.
they also deserve props for it because
Oh yeah,
not
don't
many
get me
shows
wrong.
were very brave about that back then.
I mean, he's fundamentally an action star kissing other men on screen. Like that.
Totally.
That is not normal.
Rolling around
That-
naked in a bed with
Yeah,
another
that
man
is not
on
normal
screen.
for now, let alone for 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's
I
that's
mean-
kind of the sad part about it.
I mean,
was-
and like one of the most terrifying action people in the show. Like
Yeah,
he's one
yeah.
of the most dangerous
Yeah.
motherfuckers in the entire show,
An action
and
hero.
he has a boyfriend.
Yeah.
you know?
But very openly, yeah. But
Mhm.
when I say not normal, I mean it's not commonly happening. I don't mean it's
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's not
okay.
not
I
normal
hear you,
for
Joe.
media. Yeah.
before I get eviscerated again.
No. I think we all got what you meant.
You'll
Okay.
see
Yeah,
on
but-
Twitter hashtag Joe's homophobic or something.
Yeah. Joe hates gays.
Yeah. we need to figure out what to cancel you for this week, right?
I need something. I gotta get something for Twitter for today. My
Can
my
we-
prologue thing died down.
Can we take a moment to diss people who skip prologues?
I saw that. I'm like, what?
I
How
feel
is
like we
this
need to do
trending
that.
right
Like,
now.
Mike
What is this?
in Mike's newest like weekly update or whatever, he
Yeah.
starts it by going, "What?
Yeah.
Like people skip prologues?
Yeah.
What is wrong with humans?
I think it's
Like,
a
Yeah, I
thing.
don't get that part either. I mean, like, I
It's-
wasn't
it's-
aware that happens.
It's part of the book. What
But
if
yeah.
why would
if
you
you look
skip it?
I'm not saying anyone should, but if you look at my tweet, a lot of people were like, I always skip prologues. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
It's not a myth.
Yeah.
Like there are plenty of people just like, I just if I see it. And then people are like, what do I do? Like you should make your if you want people to read it, you should make it chapter 1. And I want to reach through my computer and slap them. Like, no,
Yeah.
prologue is not chapter 1. They mean different things.
And,
Yeah.
But then somebody posted a picture which I sent
Yes,
you,
yes,
which
yes.
said prologue chapter 1.
Yeah.
It was like one page,
Yeah.
and it said prologue chapter 1, and then
Yeah.
the text started.
Yeah,
I
like it
was
was
like,
one
here's-
thing. Like the
here's
name
your
of the
solution.
chapter was prologue.
Yeah.
Like
There's-
that is
there's
not
this-
correct.
There's this wonderful thing, and I think it's in it's in Going Postal by Terry Pratchett that has like 3 prologues.
How did I know he wasn't going to mention Terry Pratchett? I'm like, that sounds like some Terry Pratchett shit. He puts like prologue and then it's chapter
But
1.
would
And
he
he,
not have
No,
chapters?
no, Pratchett normally does
I think it
not
was something
have
else.
chapters at all.
Is
Prologue.
anyone in the comments willing to out themselves as a prologue skipper?
Ron.
I mean, the worst thing that could happen is I'll kick you.
I used to be when I was a younger reader in like high school. And I
Why?
also, at the same time, I also used to be basically only a dialogue reader too, Tharnal. So that's probably why I
A
don't remember
dialogue
a
reader?
lot of Dune,
A
because I'm pretty
dialogue reader?
Yeah, reading Dune, if you only read
You're
dialogue and ignore the
skimming
prologue,
through a book
you're
and
fucked.
only reading dialogue? That's a
that wasn't
thing?
only I read, but like fun fact, undiagnosed ADD or some sort of learning disability. I didn't have the focus. Hadn't learned the focus at that point for reading. So I was like, oh, dialogue. There are like little signals there. My eyes are gonna look to that. So I'd like briefly
Wow.
read the descriptions and then,
See,
go the dialogue.
you know what's interesting and fascinating?
Wow,
You can-
Ida is full of hot takes this evening. What
What's
they
interesting-
call prologue is just a scene from the book. You miss nothing by
I
skipping
kinda-
it. You haven't read Malazan, have you, Ida?
I think of
But every
prologues as,
scene
like,
in the book is a scene from the book. You can skip them all. Just don't read the book.
Skip
Go
the
read,
book.
do something else. Watch a movie. I don't know. Like, how does that make any sense?
See, here's an interesting
Daniel's
thing,
got a
though.
point, Joe. Very disappointed to find no prologue to skip in your recent work.
Yeah. my last 3 books. have had no prologue.
Tori! Hi, Tori.
You know, we
Thank
were just
you.
talking
Yeah,
about
you
you,
just
Tori.
talked
We were
about
gonna.
We were just
wondering
talking
if you-
about you and how you have to watch The Wire.
Yeah, we were wondering if you'd like The Wire.
What were you gonna say, Raph? Sorry.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, like with the prologues and stuff like that, what I found interesting is that when they make audiobooks, because I often, sometimes listen to an audiobook instead of reading the physical book, there are books where they leave out not prologues, but when there's like an author's preface or afterword or stuff like that, they'll leave
That's not
that
part
stuff
of the
out.
story.
But it's still interesting because they don't
Yeah,
say
but-
like we skipped that. You buy the audiobook of, in this case, Bernard Cornwell's Warlord Chronicles, the Arthurian massacre that he committed, and he does have a historical forward or afterward. I think it's a forward or afterward, like where he talks about like his sources and stuff like that, and why he chose to do something in the way he chose to do that stuff.
I think
And they
Nicola
left
Griffith, her
that-
afterward.
And they left that out of the audiobook, but they're not saying anything of the sorts. Sometimes they add that like as a downloadable PDF or whatever when there's like pronunciation guides or family trees, shit like that. But they just left that out. And I
mean,
had
that
to go.
seems.
I had to
That
go and
seems. I don't think anyone's going to argue with you that that's just wrong and
Yeah.
unfair to people, especially like you,
Yeah.
who can only audiobook.
I had to
Like,
go and
that's
commit
ridiculous.
illegal actions to get those to get those historic afterwards, because when I made my Arthurian video and spent a lot of time trashing Bernard Cornwell because his books suck, I wanted to be fair and actually read his historic afterwards as well to make sure that I get all of it, and that pissed me off.
Does the audiobook for Spear include Nicola Griffith's afterward?
Now, that is a question I don't know. Also, may I congratulate you for being the most sneaky bastard out there by doing that to me, because now I have to read it.
Evie will always find a way. I'm surprised she didn't send you one Audible credit to get it.
No. Spear by Nicola Griffith, not Spear Cuts Through Water.
Not
Just-
Spear Cuts Through Water.
Spear
Just
does also
Spear.
not have the afterword, no.
Okay.
Which is weird because she actually narrated her own book. And just to be fair, clear,
Why
Matt,
would you
I
not
do
include
own
that?
the Spear Cut Through Water as well. I have owned it for over a year by now. It's on my phone all the time.
That's gonna be like a mixed. Evie's really happy and you're pissing her off. Like, I do own it,
Listen.
yay! But I've owned it for a year and I haven't bothered listening to it.
I downloaded it and I'm constantly carrying it with me everywhere I
I
go.
genuinely am terrified for when and if Raph reads The Spear
Oh,
Cuts
I
Through
will
Water,
read it,
because
definitely.
I know he will not hold. Raph, I know you won't hold back. If you don't like it, you will not.
Explain to you in length
nice
why
enough.
not.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now you're a bad person for liking it.
There's I think that's one of those things that people don't realize. There's very few books I actively dislike or don't like. I'm very good at liking books. There's a few things that I personally think are, dangerous, harmful, and so forth, which is, the R.A. Salvatore Drizzt novels, Wheel of Time, I think, is actually actively harmful.
Yeah, on those.
Stuff like that is actively harmful. But beyond that, I'm very easy to please. And I'll find, and this is another one of these things that often bugs me, right? You have people going like, well, I like the more deep and thoughtful books. Like, you can take any book out there. It doesn't matter what it is. It can be Ice Planet Barbarians if you want. You can find interesting things to jump off intellectually and think about in every book. As soon as people put more than one word on a page, there's something you can think about. But that's up to you as the reader.
So basically, what I'm trying to say is, if you don't universally and have undying adoration, then it's going to be a disappointment for me.
I rarely have unadulterated adoration for any book.
Yeah, I'm just
except for Winnie the Pooh, which is of course the best novel ever written.
Of course.
I can't tell if that's sarcasm or not.
Not fully. I think Winnie the Pooh and the House of Pooh Corner are incredibly good books. Unironically.
Interesting. Is Eeyore?
Has anyone
Eeyore in the cartoons? Because Eeyore was my spirit animal.
Has anyone just quickly? Has anyone on screen or in the comments ever heard Raph have an opinion of a book that was that short? Like, I don't think I've ever heard Raph just say, "This is unironically good." Full stop. That's it.
I made a half an hour video on why it's the perfect novel, years ago.
Okay,
I have more to say on the topic.
That relaxes me somewhat. Like, Raph already talked a half an hour about this book. That makes
guys. I have to
better.
go. Matt, congratulations on 2000.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks for coming by.
Good to see you guys.
Good to see you again.
Take care.
Ciao. Wouldn't it be really funny if YouTube had a 2K error? So every time you reach 2,000 subscribers, if you actually hit the exact 2,000 and don't just jump over it or whatever, it'll just reset to 0 subscribers.
Just resets to nothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird to think having 2,000 subscribers is strange to me. Especially because, well, it was like this back when I had a podcast as well. It's like when the dude, because literally our podcast was me and a friend eating pizza and drinking beer, and we made it as difficult to listen to as possible in that we did alternating episodes, one German, one English. So if you were German with bad English, or if you were English and couldn't speak German, you could only listen to half of our podcast. And we figured out at one point we had 1,000 people listening every week, and we're like, why? I don't understand. And when I started this, I was never like, oh, this is going to be thousands of people who actually bother to watch what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Seems strange.
I think that first of all, yes, Eeyore and Marvin from Hitchhiker's Guide are very similar, and I understand why they speak to so many people. And Tornol, I will not explain why I think Drizzt is bad. I did that earlier.
He's also done that at length in many videos,
in a lot of detail.
Yeah, go watch any of Raph's recent December videos, and you'll get more than enough explanation, Tornol.
Although I tried to be fair to both to Robert Jordan back in the day, and I tried to be fair to R.A. Salvatore and the Drizzt books. When there's something that is good, unironically good, I'll point it out. Unfortunately, there's also a lot of stuff that is unironically bad.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a good point, Ida. German teacher made us listen to German radio at school on our very first lesson. Her point was, we understand more than we thought we did. That is true. But if you're open-minded to a foreign language, the first time, strangely, I realized that I had learned German pretty good when I went to Holland or the Netherlands, because I was wandering around the streets of Amsterdam and I could read signs in Dutch because I could translate them, because they were close enough to the German I had learned that I could recognize them and make good guesses at least at what they said. And yeah, no, I mean there are some languages I think that are much more alien depending on what your native language is. Like I don't think I could listen to Japanese radio and understand anything, not even have a feeling of what they're talking about. But European languages, sure, a lot of them I think you can kind of piece together and get a bit here and there. Because I speak German, I also, like in Denmark, I get kind of every 10th word, you know, just enough to make really bad
English
guesses.
also helps there.
Yeah.
Like our English teacher back in the day, what he did was that was really cool in that regard as well. It's like he gave us a text and it's like, okay, so every word you don't know, just like completely cross it out, black it out so you can't read it. And after you've done that through the entire text, go read the text and tell me what it's about. And yeah, it worked for most people. And because oftentimes, especially when we learn language, we're like, oh, I don't know this word. And we get hung up on the words that we don't know and ignore all the stuff that we already know. So that was like a really interesting exercise to see like how much of an of a text you could just like strike out and still get the meaning.
Ida went to school in southern Denmark. I assume you're Danish, and does that mean I'm pronouncing your name wrong? Is it Ida or is it Ida? I think if you're Danish, it's probably Ida. But I lived in Denmark for a while. I lived on Lolland, which is very southern Denmark. Where in southern Denmark are you from, Ida?
I've traveled through Denmark twice.
Yeah, I lived. It was maybe a mistake, but I lived on a farm in the middle of fucking nowhere on an island which is almost devoid of people in southern Denmark for a year and a half.
See, I went through Denmark
Ron's
on my way to Norway to an island where no one lived.
Ron's excited. Evie's labeler. Show off your labeler, Evie.
Listen.
Listen.
Let me talk to you about my labeler.
You do that, I get myself another beer.
Yes. It's tactile. And it's nostalgic. That's the only reason I have it. Because
I love those things. I also have one.
Nice. Yeah, my husband was harping at me. He's like, why don't you get a digital one? It's easier. And I'm like, you don't understand.
It's not nearly as cool. I bought one of those specifically, really only to label the spice jars in my kitchen. Because I love the physical, like the very analogness of it. I love those things. And it looks like a phaser, as Daniel pointed out.
It's true.
Which is a big plus.
So yeah, my husband and I we got we switched to ground coffee that we just fill a reusable K-cup with. This is not something you can eat. I'm so sorry.
Label the dog. Label the dog.
Ooh, I could do that. Hold on, Max.
You saw it the first time here on the Sunday Pub. Animal cruelty with a nostalgic labeler.
He's going to eat this. I swear to God. Hold on.
There's a good chance, I would think. You're going to try and actually put it on his nose.
You know, I had a dream about Black Leopard Red Wolf last night.
Dog.
He's like, what's that?
Is your husband sick of you walking around with the labeler labeling everything in your house?
No, so before I got distracted, so we switched to ground coffee and we use a reusable K-cup now. I've been using it for like the past 3 weeks, and my husband just finally switched to ground coffee because he realized, it makes sense to use this. So instead of having to open each bag and like shove our hands in and trying to scoop out coffee grounds, I was like, you know what? We'll get mason jars. So I got a opaque mason jar, a black mason jar with I got a special cap for him. So basically we can just pour it out. We don't even have to open it up. We just pour it out with the little tubey thing, whatever. And I used my label maker and I literally put his and her on there. And I put tiramisu on mine because I will just drink tiramisu flavored coffee.
What?
And
Wait a sec.
Isn't tiramisu already coffee flavored?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're taking a coffee flavored thing.
But you gotta
flavored
add the lady fingers and the chocolate like syrupy thing.
See, this is the essence of what's wrong with America.
Yeah, we're fucking idiots. I
This
have to admit,
basically
as an American.
explains everything you need to know about what's wrong with America and why it will burn like Rome did. Tiramisu flavored coffee. Not only it exists, but it's the only coffee you'll drink.
I don't like non-flavored coffee.
I like coffee cake.
See, that's like people who say they don't like non-flavored beers or non-flavored. Be honest about your addiction. If you want caffeine,
You know you can get caffeine in pills.
directly.
Yeah, you can just get caffeine pills.
Yeah.
Like you can just like snort no-dos.
Well, listen,
Wow.
I never claimed to be a smart, intelligent, non-American American. Okay.
I mean,
Listen, I am just a stereotype.
You didn't say the words pumpkin spice, so I don't have to kick you.
I still don't understand pumpkin spice. I never understood it. Then recently someone told me that it's basically the stuff we use all year round for, just spice stuff, Christmas cookies and shit. And I'm like, so why do you make such a big deal out of that?
It's because rampant consumerism in America. That's why peppermint is only available during Christmas time.
I think that's one of those things that really annoys me. I always have to buy up all the Christmas cookies, like there's the Stroopwafel or in German Spekulatius, which are my favorite Christmas cookies. And I always have to buy up huge stores so I can still eat them in July because I still drink tea in July. So I want to drink tea and eat Christmas cookies and read Lord of the Rings.
Coffee flavored coffee. It's not coffee flavored coffee, Daniel. It's coffee flavored flavored coffee.
Again, you got to include the flavoring of the lady fingers and the mascarpone.
On the raw egg and everything. Yeah, again, it's still weird.
I never claimed to be not that. So I never claimed to be not weird and not an intelligent American. And
no, that's fine. I'm more surprised by the fact that there is apparently enough demand for this to actually exist.
That's the thing that always blows me away is there are products in America that exist where
I'm going to add even more to this, okay?
Who's buying this?
Because there's tiramisu flavored coffee syrup that I also bought and add to my tiramisu flavored coffee.
So you're taking coffee flavored coffee and putting coffee flavored syrup in it.
This is turning into Inception, guys. Like
it's really beginning to sound a lot to me like you could just drink coffee and put sugar in it.
I don't want to do that.
Apparently.
So why don't you just go and get some tiramisu and then just like run it through a blender and turn it into like a tiramisu smoothie and maybe crush some caffeine pills into that as well.
I mean, I totally could do that. I haven't tried it. I love tiramisu anything, so bad tiramisu, fancy tiramisu, like
put tiramisu into like a smoothie mixer. Like
it sounds like you're going to a lot of trouble to make your coffee not taste like just coffee.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think Raph is really onto something. Like, why don't you just make tiramisu smoothies? And if you miss the caffeine, just like crush up some no-dos in there and whack it in a blender.
Yeah.
Well,
Eva, or rather Bex, if you want something to snort for downers, I'd say beer. I mean, it doesn't snort that well, but
unless you drink it, then someone tells a really bad joke.
That's true. That's the wrong direction, though.
That's
that's the opposite of snorting. Snort out. Yeah. No, I don't know. Eggnog latte is delicious, and D is British.
Eggnog is amazing.
I like eggnog, like in very controlled amounts around Christmas. That's fine, as long as there's a lot of alcohol in it. But the whole flavored coffee thing, I'm just like, man.
To be fair,
why do all these people hate coffee? What did coffee ever do to you?
It is not like for anyone
Destroy
in the chat,
entire
this is-
economies in colonial countries.
That was
Um,
tea.
my husband doesn't understand why I will not drink coffee on its own. He drinks coffee black, no cream, no sugar, and he doesn't understand. He's like, "Why do you just have the like?" Basically, I put oat milk in my coffee. He's like, "Why don't you just drink oat milk?" Then I'm like, "Listen, I just want coffee flavored oat milk or coffee flavored whatever this is." I'm like, "I don't want something flavored coffee."
See, I don't necessarily like the taste of coffee, which is why I just drink tea.
I love
Because
coffee.
I can have my imperialism drink in another flavor.
Oh God. Okay, I'm gonna go down a rabbit hole, dadgummit, now because I'm gonna see if there's tiramisu
Dadgummit. Did
flavored
you really
tea.
seriously, unironically say dadgummit?
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. I'm at a loss for words.
You do realize
I feel
right?
sluggish when I drink coffee. I hate
you-
the feeling.
I think you're doing it wrong.
I hate the feeling I get when I drink coffee.
I drink every morning. I drink
hate the
2
effort.
shots of espresso in hot water, which is called an Americano in Germany anyway, and actually in Italy. So it's not black coffee like Americans do. It's not like dishwater that once was rubbed on a bottle that had a coffee bean in it. It's actually espresso with hot water and no flavors, no milk, no sugar, because I like coffee to be coffee.
For anyone that is curious, aka no one except for me, there is tiramisu flavored tea.
Bah!
Like Dr. Pepper flavored candy. I just can't get behind it. It's not the Dr. Pepper.
One thing that I found interesting when you brought up the eggnog. The eggnog, I'm not a fan, but I appreciate that eggnog is one of the prime examples that humans will find a way to turn anything into alcohol. Like eggnog? Like seriously? Why? Why? Can we make this alcohol?
Because at the holidays, you have to spend a lot of time with your family.
Yeah.
So you want to be drunk.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, eggnog is a holiday drink, a Christmas drink. So of course you have to put a lot of alcohol in it. Yeah, wow, flavored coffee. I used to, a long time ago, when I lived in America, I used to drink caramel lattes. That was as flavored as I got. And at some point, I decided to actually just consciously give it a try, just drinking actual coffee. Like no anything in it, no sugar, no milk. And I can't go back now. I have even the lightest bit of milk in a coffee now, and I'm like, oh my God, this is insanely sweet. I can't do it. And last time I was in America, I actually tried a caramel latte and I nearly puked. I was like, this is just straight sugar. There is no coffee in this coffee.
America.
Oh my God.
America.
I might go and drink some coffee like the week after. In 2 weeks, I'll be in Athens. And because Greeks are like Greeks, they have Turkish coffee, but call it Greek coffee, but it's the same thing. And it's,
they have Turkish food and call it Greek food.
That is also true.
I have a good friend in Athens, and his last name is Staboulides. And I was like, Staboulides, that doesn't sound like a super typical Greek name.
Nice that they eat us at the end and makes it Greek.
Yeah, it makes it sound Greek. And I was like, where's that from? And he was like, and he actually took me out on the balcony so that his family couldn't hear, like his aunt and his grandmother and whatever. He was like, it means Istanbul. I was like, what? I thought you're Greek. And he's like, yeah, but you know that Turkey's right there, right? Like you can almost see it from here. He said, I'm not one of those Greeks who's paranoid and crazy about all of this stuff. Like half of our food is Turkish. Half of their food is Greek. All of the things, like so many things that we call Greek are Turkish, and so many things that the Turks call Turkish are Greek.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
it's
like one
just
of those things in Greek and Turkish history that I don't know how many people actually know these kind of things. Like that once the Ottoman Empire kind of broke up and Greek was independent and Turkey was independent, there was a bit of a war between Greek and Turkey Greece and Turkey back then. And there were like situations where like entire populations from like Pontus were moved to Greece, and in sort of like a population exchange that has left a lot of scars with especially people that you sort of like lived in Asia Minor and were in fact thought of themselves as Greek, and they were just removed or moved to Greece. And there's still like a lot of resentment in that like early 1920s stuff in Greek history and Turkish history, because the Greeks were the bad guys in that. Let's not forget that the Greeks were really the bad guys, but it still fell back on people that had nothing to do with one Greek nationalist prime minister.
Just quickly, thank you, Alicia. Hi. Good to see you. And Evie has been holding up the Iliad for like 5 minutes. You can't tell Raph, obviously. But
yeah, no, I was waiting for my turn to talk.
Exactly.
Like the Greek, like this is the Iliad is a great example of the Greek and Turkish, cultural
exchange,
because Troy is in Turkey.
Sure.
So they've always been fighting. I see.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
There are just certain places in the world where the neighbors have always been fighting.
Thank you, Ron. It's Istanbul, not Constantinople. Now Istanbul, not Constantinople. Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
We're done.
I saw them live once. I saw them live once. That was a crazy show. They might be giants.
Yeah.
They put on a really nutty show, especially since it's just two guys. But
yeah.
I'm sorry. DK Moon's comment is got me dying.
Yeah.
When you mix Greece and Turkey, you get fried turkey. Uh-huh.
Oh God! All right, I'm gonna take that as my note that I need to go take care of my dog because my husband got to go run errands and the dog is whining. So
I think Ida means underrated. Yes.
Yeah.
Greece, like being a tourist in Greece, is really nice. Greece is a great place to visit.
It's a fantastic place. I can't wait to go back. I've been there so many times, especially in Athens. I always hang out in Exarchia with all the anarchists, and
of course,
it's a good place. No,
I was actually in Exarchia in the middle of a riot accidentally once.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
Yeah, there were like full-on university student anarchists throwing bricks in the street, and I was sitting in a cafe, and I was like, my friend, Mr. Stabulidis, I was like, dude, what? Yeah. He's like, oh yeah, this happens all the time. Let's just order another coffee. It'll pass by. It's like it was the weather or something, It'll
like, pass. I bet you're just like, how are you so casual about all that?
I was at a concert and like the band stopped playing and everyone usually goes outside to smoke and so forth, and they just like kept the door closed, and someone came and said like, look, there's been a riot outside during the concert. The street right now is full of tear gas. You might want to wait like 10 minutes before you go outside.
But I mean, to be fair, it was like that at least once a year in St. Pauli in Hamburg, where I used to live, because the Antifa people would have their annual riot.
Yeah,
it was literally like these are German anarchists, so it's scheduled. When the Antifa riot's going to be. They don't happen spontaneously like in Greece.
I think it's what is important, however, to understand, especially about Exarchia, is that Greece, like some countries in the 20th century, had themselves a military dictatorship through the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
And the resistance that finally broke that military dictatorship started at Athens University, which is right next to Exarchia. So that's an important aspect. That tradition has done good. Like rioting helped defeat a military dictatorship, which I assume is something we all agree is a good thing. I mean,
it's not necessarily an excuse for honestly lazy, aggressive university students doing it today, because that's pretty much the only reasons they're doing it is because it's fun to break shit. But
Exarchia is still very much from, they have a lot of like squats there, squats that are used to house refugees during the refugee crisis, stuff like that. There is a lot of activism, serious activism happening in Exarchia still. It's not just, it's not just riot tourism. That also happens, but there is some serious leftist community activities happening there that help people in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's probably a lot like St. Pauli in Hamburg. Like the Antifa people there really are active and committed to a cause. But I've been in the middle. I used to go down and photograph the riots, and I knew a lot of the Antifa people because they hung out in bars around the corner from my flat. And every time I went down there, it was pretty much 50% or more of the people there throwing bricks at the police were people who had busted in from Poppenbüttel, which is outside Hamburg, suburbs. They were teenagers who were looking for some fun. They had nothing to do with Antifa. They had nothing to do with any kind of cause. They were just bored assholes. And that always really pissed me off because they were setting fire to my neighborhood and throwing bricks at shops and things that I went to regularly. And that was pretty tiring.
Which is stupid because the people living in St. Pauli, the shop owners there are not big capital. No, exactly. That's the thing.
Sticking
They're
it to
all
the system by blowing up a bunch of local businesses.
Yeah,
Keep it
exactly.
classy.
And a lot of the people who always got hurt. This was one of the good things I did like about the Antifa people is they always had a really well organized medical team on hand. But I never saw a cop get hurt. Never once. Because they come prepared. They know there's going to be a riot. They've got riot gear on. They got helmets and everything. The people who got hurt were bystanders. When you start indiscriminately throwing bricks at night in the dark, you hit people and not always the people you intend to hit. So it's complicated with their riots, especially since it's basically like they're not rioting in any kind of real attempt to change anything. The riots in St. Pauli have become literally a party.
I think Exarchia is still different. Exarchia is still different in a lot of ways in that regard. And you have, especially under the current conservative government, things have changed during like the financial crisis and the way, especially Germany really, really shafted Greece during that time. There are very active attempts.
Just to interrupt really quickly, I think Evie has been trying to leave for like 10 minutes.
Oh no!
Yeah,
I want to give her a chance.
Take care of the dog. I forgot.
Yeah, it's okay. Also, I have nothing to add except for
go to Greece.
Yeah, I guess.
It's one of those. It's one of those subjects that I think a lot of people don't
experience riots, I suppose, or the cross-cultural conflict between Greece and Turkey. Great. So, Kyle, I feel like you're trolling, but we did genuinely talk about The Wire, and I think we started talking about it after you left, but I can't remember.
We definitely did, because I know there would have been a lot more enthusiasm from people that weren't me if Kyle had been here. We did indeed talk about The Wire, but we did talk about it after you left. If you want to come back on, we can happily talk about it some more, but it would probably only be you and me really getting it. Although Britton was also saying
I like The Wire. It's a great show.
Yeah, exactly.
I need to rewatch it though. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Some things are sacred. Anyways, congratulations on 2K, Raph. It's very nice.
Congrats on 2K, man. That's crazy.
Britton, nice to see you.
Thank you for coming, Evie. Always good to see you in the
also,
pub.
I will actually end, and I will leave on this note. Ida, yes, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. Because
normalize not wearing bras.
I've burnt all my bras. Speaking of rioting, I've burnt all my bras. So
very good. Honored tradition. I respect it.
Anyways, bye.
Bye. I might also. I think that's not a bad opportunity to sign off. It's been 2.5 hours already for me, anyway.
Yeah, about 30 minutes. I'm gonna do something with my dad. So
yeah, cool. As
Before I leave,
always,
what are you actually reading at the moment, Matt?
I am
I've heard
reading
about
The
the
Two
disaster
Towers.
that was you trying to reread Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a full-on disaster. It was just more like, I don't know. I don't remember Leiber's prose being sort of clumsy, or not clumsy as in he's unskilled, but I felt clumsy trying to read it. Put it that way. And I was also, honestly, I was having a pretty hard time with his female characters.
He's really bad at some of that. Yes.
Oh my God. I mean, like on just a surface level, I found pretty much all of his female characters extremely annoying. And I was forced to constantly ask myself what he thinks of women, you know, and I don't like having the author force me to think about him in books. And it seemed like,
I think
I don't know, the female representation and the attitude that the world and the story kind of expressed about women was something I was like, I mean, it's, I wouldn't like say, oh, he was definitely a misogynist or anything like that. But a lot of stuff in the stories made me kind of go, oh.
Yeah, and I know what you mean. I think it's partly the problem that when they did Leiber's attitude towards women is very complex in a lot of ways. The problem is that when they made these like Swords Against the Swords collection, they turned stories into like this sort of like biographical chronological order. And that means that especially those introductory both the Snow Women and what's it called, the Unholy Grail are both really bad in that regard. And so is Ilmet and Lankmar I absolutely love as a story, but the female characters that get fridged immediately, really bad.
And I mean the beginning of Ilmet, but before they get fridged, they're just like remarkably manipulative and unsympathetic women.
But that's, I don't know. I always felt that they're not unsympathetic. I always read it as like, look how incredibly stupid Fafhrd and the Mouser are.
Also, yeah.
Which sort of like, I always like so much of like Fafhrd and Grey Mouser. The charm for me comes from reading this and going like, yes, I was this incredibly stupid. I was this toxically masculine. I fell for all of these things because I was an idiot.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely an aspect to the stories where I was like, it could be that this is all actually a really intelligent critique of how stupid men can be. You know, there is an aspect of that, but
I think it's sort of stronger in other stories where that happens again and again, and especially the Mouser often just. He sees a woman and he gets incredibly stupid, and everyone around him is, dude, don't do that. And even the woman is signaling like, I'm just gonna play with you because you're an idiot. And Mouse is like, oh, woman.
Yeah. I knew that if we started talking about Leiber, it would have to summon Liam. Yeah. No,
I was about to mention. Yeah, we're about to summon Liam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't think while I was reading it that Leiber was dumb, that he wasn't getting it or anything like that. It was just, I don't know. Like if you read a few stories and there are a number of women in them and all of them are manipulative and extremely unpleasant from a reader perspective, or at least they were for me, then I was just like, whatever is going on with Leiber himself. I wasn't enjoying them the way I did when I was a teenager, which surprise, I've changed.
I think for me, like my main point was that like, because of the reordering of the stories in that way, the start is rough and the more interesting, fun stories kind of happen in later books. Yeah, because they got kind of reshuffled.
Your original question was, what am I reading? I'm reading The Two Towers.
That's a good book. I've
it is a
heard
good
about
book.
it. It does have towers, and there's 2 of them. I mean, actually, there's like more than 2. And
I'm still waiting for the towers. Like
I heard there's a
I'm
tree
thinking
person
of-
in that one.
I'm thinking of DNFing it actually, because like on the cover it says 2 towers, and so far there aren't any
did you
I heard
towers.
there's tree
did
people
you
in
skip did you skip the prologue? No, it didn't have one to skip.
It doesn't have a
Big
prologue.
mark against it there.
I skipped the appendices in the first book. No, I didn't. I never skipped the appendices. I love the appendices. But yeah, I'm reading the 2 towers and vlogging it, which again is like nobody watched my first vlogs, so I don't know why I'm continuing to do it, but I am. And it's a very different experience. It's an interesting experience vlogging a book, because you've got kind of 2 choices. You've got either interrupt yourself constantly and record something short that is like a fresh reaction to what you just read, or get into your book and very focused on it, and then realize you've read 3 chapters and now you have to go back and think about the first of those 3 chapters to record something for it. It's an interesting experience, but yeah, that's what I'm doing.
I've never understood what vlogs are in that way. It's like, especially with a book that I have read before, and you have read Lord of the Rings maybe more times than me, which I guess is somewhere between 5 and 10 is where I am at, I think.
I stopped counting at 12.
Yeah, see,
so I'm
like,
probably around 15 or 16 by now.
Yes, vlogging, it feels kind of weird, because even though you talk about your reaction to a scene, you already know what's going to happen next.
Well, I'm doing these a little bit differently. First of all, one of the things I said in the first one, in the introduction to it, is I'm watching the movies, like rewatching the movies, which I've also seen I don't know how many times. I'm rewatching the movies, and I'm trying to be, well, first of all, the mission, so to speak, if there is one, is I know a lot of younger people who have not and don't want to read Lord of the Rings, but they are huge fans of the movies.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of trying to connect the 2 experiences a little bit and say, hey, look, I think the movies were a great adaptation, and I really enjoyed them, and I love the movies, but they're a different medium. So of course the books are different. And I like when I start each book, like when I started Fellowship, I rewatched the movie, and I was actually surprised at how much is really, really changed. I mean, it's not surprising, because an adaptation, of course they change things. They have to. Totally understand it. I am not a book purist. It must be exactly like the book. But I'm trying to kind of connect them and say, oh, this bit in the movie, if you liked that, there's a lot more background on it in the book, because you get this and you get this, and, and it's inspired me to make other things. I still am working on my research and ideas for a video all about Tom Bombadil.
Please, we need more Tom Bombadil content out there.
I think we do. Like, if I ever make a Lord of the Rings movie, I mean, spoilers, I won't. But if I ever make a Lord of the Rings movie, I'm going to hire you, Raph, to play Tom. I think you could do a very good job.
My singing ridiculous songs. But I think you're right with like the changing and the adaptation. I think the adaptation is really good. But it always freaks me out when I realize, I watched the movie, a video from the science YouTuber Angela Collier, called Collier Astro at the time, and now she's changed to Angela Collier, and she does science communication stuff. And she made a video where she finally read Lord of the Rings, and after years, and was surprised about how it ended. And I'm like, there's an entire generation that thinks Lord of the Rings has a happy end when the ring gets dropped into the mountain and Aragorn becomes king. There's hundreds of thousands
leaving
of people.
out the scouring of the Shire was the only crime in the movies. Like, I totally understand leaving out Tom. I love Tom. I am a huge Tom Bombadil fan, but I totally will not diss Jackson for taking out Tom, because Tom is a speed bump in the narrative.
Yeah.
Like, he's a super charming lore speed bump, and that's why I love him, but he's a speed bump. He doesn't really have a narrative function at all.
Yeah.
Removing him doesn't change the story.
but
removing the scouring of the Shire makes it a completely different book. Or a
It
completely
does,
different
and
story.
I understand. I even understand why they leave it out, because having that final happy ending, so to speak, epic ending at the end of the way the movies do, kind of fits much better to the way movies are structured than how books are structured. I get why they're doing it, but it kind of blows my mind every time I realize it's hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of people who call themselves fans of Lord of the Rings, and they don't know how the books end and how they. Yeah, it's like
they don't actually get one of the big points that Tolkien was making. Yeah.
I remember that.
I think it's hilarious. Like when I watched the movies, I was with my girlfriend, and she had never read the books, and the movie ended, and I was like, but wait, there's more. This can't be the end. Yeah,
I remember like years ago I watched like a video on Grimdark, and one of those Grimdark self-published authors talked about like how Grimdark has consequences and Lord of the Rings doesn't have consequences. No one ever loses body parts. No one has ever traumatized. And I'm like, you, sir, have
never read Lord of the Rings. Yeah,
Let me tell you the story of Frodo of the Nine Fingers.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
But I think
that little creature bites his finger off when he's about to take the ring for himself.
But I think it's interesting in the way that we do fantasy discourse when we do booktube or whatever, to realize that there are people who are hardcore fantasy fans who have a completely different image of what fantasy is and of what like one of the formative texts of fantasy is, which Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to do with that.
I mean, I just did like my most recent video was that, but Dune.
Yeah.
Where I was like, I'm a huge fan of the new movies. Like I loved the first movie, and the second movie is coming out on Wednesday, and I already have tickets for Wednesday. I can't wait to see it. But it occurred to me, I was like, I read Dune when I was a teenager. It was a formative reading experience for me, and I've read it 6 or 8 or something times since then. And I just reread the first book recently.
Yeah.
And it occurred to me there's going to be a whole generation now who doesn't know the book.
Yeah.
They're going to watch the movies, they're going to love the movies, they're going to call themselves huge Dune fans, and they've never read the book. And I made a very short video like, here are some good reasons why you should actually read the book, because it's really good.
I love like the example that I pulled out like last year when I did my Arthurian and stuff. Like, how many people have watched movie adaptations of that Mark Twain one, the Connecticut Yankee at King Arthur's Court? And how many of these people know that the book ends with fucking genocide and Merlin stepping into an electric fence and killing himself?
Dude, I haven't read that book. The hell?
Spoilers for anyone who hasn't read.
For a 150-year-old book, yeah.
Yeah. There's got to be an expiry date for spoilers. Like there are a lot of books out there that are old that we haven't read, but we're not going to keep them secret forever.
Yeah. I just found it interesting because it kind of shows how there's a difference between a sort of like the cultural version of a text, which means Lord of the Rings. A lot of books and stories have turned into that. It's like, I have not read. There's classics I have not read. There's a lot of people who have never read, say, the Iliad, but still, everyone kind of knows the story of the Iliad, or they think they do.
Yeah, and Helen, something Troy, something
Trojan horse,
Odysseus, something horse.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Something Achilles.
Yeah, it kind of goes the same way. Like, say, Moby Dick is another one. It's like everyone knows the story of Moby Dick, but how many people have actually read the entire thing? And it's interesting to see that, because we're always like, those are classics, and I kind of know the stories of classics. And suddenly we've reached the point where books that we started reading as fans when they were not considered classics or anything of the sorts suddenly have reached sort of that like event horizon where suddenly the story or the sort of like cultural meaning of the story has transcended the original text, the original book. And unlike with, like, say, the Iliad, we actually kind of know who wrote the thing because Tolkien left a shitload of letters and stuff. But it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
to
you can delve extremely deeply into Tolkien's life and what he thought
Yeah.
about everything.
Yeah, I just find it interesting to see that sort of in real time as I am growing older and more decrepit. I can see how Lord of the Rings meaning shifts because it suddenly becomes this story that everyone vaguely knows and recognizes.
Yeah,
but it's not the book that I read.
Yeah, I'm really some of what inspired me to make that recent video about Dune is I'm a little bit nervous about the second movie. I mean, it's going to be, I'm sure it's going to be beautiful and exciting and all of that. Like Villeneuve does really well, but I've heard some things where I'm like, okay, it feels like Villeneuve may be fucking with some of the really essential points that Herbert was making in the book, and some of the meaning of the characters. And I'm withholding judgment completely until Wednesday, but yeah, I still think it's worth reading the book. It's always worth reading the book. I don't always think that the book is better. Like there was a lot of in the comments on that video, there was a lot of, yeah, but the book is always better and whatever. I'm like, no, it's not.
No.
Like, I think it's comparing apples and oranges. Like I don't
Stalker's
know
a better film than Roadside Picnic is a book.
Yeah, but you're not getting my point. If you're saying that, you're just like already not getting my point. I haven't finished making. Like,
oh, sorry.
Comparing the two almost doesn't even make sense to me because they are so different. The needs and the possibilities and the opportunities of writing a book are so different from a movie. Like I can say that I don't think any movie adaptation I've ever seen I found personally more enjoyable than the book it was based on. They probably exist, and for other people, like enjoyable is.
I think Blade Runner might come
taste.
close to me, for me at least.
I haven't actually read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, so
It's a really good story.
I don't actually know.
Yeah, it's a really good story, but yeah, Blade Runner might come close.
I mean, Blade Runner is one of my all-time favorite movies, so it might be
Androids is very different.
One of the ones where I would say, yes, this is definitely more enjoyable. But yeah, I just I have a lot of understanding for directors and a lot of sympathy because I think it's a really hard job. For directors who are adapting especially a well-loved book, a popular book that millions of people have read, like Lord of the Rings. I mean, luckily for Jackson, it came out pretty good and everybody loved it, or a lot of people loved it anyway.
It also came out at the right time for having enough of an audience that had not read the books and not having, and the hardcore audience being sort of desperate anyway. So it kind of worked.
And also the hardcore audience being old like me, and nobody cares what old people think. So
yeah, which I think is
easy.
Partly why I say Wheel of Time kind of has such of a hard time. Not talking about the actual quality of the adaptation, but it's like the Wheel of Time fandom is very active and has been active and opinionated on the internet for the last 20 years. Yeah. You're gonna run up against problems there.
Yeah,
Peter Jackson did not.
They're going to hate it no matter what you do.
Exactly. Peter Jackson did not have the internet to contend with, or at least not that much of the visible internet.
Not as much. Yeah.
That really helped him.
Anyway, guys, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
I was starting to leave, but the conversation drew me in again. It's been good to see you. Thank you for everybody else that turned up. Thank you for everybody in the comments. Thank you for all the congratulations for my arbitrary number of subscribers. And I will see you probably next week.
Oh, yes, man. I need to tell you something before we go.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Britton. Thank you very much.
That was really cool. All right. See you guys around. I better get some sleep.
Good idea. Ciao.
I have